All right. Going to call to order this February 15th regular board meeting of the Southern York County School District Board of Education. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we have roll call.
Elizabeth Doberman.
Here.
Mary Lee Hall.
Here.
Samantha Hall.
Here.
William Hall.
Here.
Jeremy Hash.
Here.
Jennifer Henkel.
Here.
Nathan Henkel.
Here.
James Holly.
Here.
Joseph Wilson.
Here.
Dr. Bryson, I believe you have a few words you'd like to say.
Thank you, President Hinkle. Dear Southern community, I wanted to take a moment here to start this evening's meeting just to share communication that I had sent out on Monday as a result of an incident that occurred over the weekend, as well as some additional statements to adjoin to that. Over the weekend, the Southern York County School District learned that a Susquehannock High School student posted a highly inappropriate racial comment on social media. This incident is in direct opposition to the values and principles that guide our district mission and vision. While the social media post was not made during school hours, we want to make it unequivocally clear that the district takes this issue seriously. At the Southern York County School District, the safety of each student, including physically, socially, and emotionally, is a priority. The district is working with our school resource officer as well as Southern Regional Police Department to actively investigate the incident. Our priority is to provide support to the victim and assess what measures will be taken to address the situation. We are committed to working collaboratively with all parties involved to achieve a resolution and determine how to prevent such occurrences in the future. The Southern York County School District is dedicated to fostering a safe environment where diversity and inclusion are celebrated and where all students feel safe and valued. On our campuses, discrimination and bullying will not be tolerated in any form and will result in disciplinary action. While our primary focus is the well-being of our students during the school day, we are also committed to helping students develop character as individuals and understand that kindness and respect are important beyond our school walls. We encourage our parents to partner with us in this effort and to talk to their children about social media use, treating others with dignity, and showing respect and kindness for others. We're grateful to those who stepped forward to bring this incident to the community and to our attention. And if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to your child's counselor or principal. It is through our collective efforts that we can uphold the principles of respect, empathy, and inclusivity in both our district and the greater community. To follow up on this statement, I want to offer my deepest sympathy and empathy, and more empathy than anything, towards the victim and all the family and friends and community members that this has impacted. The incident has impacted many, and the high school administration immediately reached out and was reached out to by both families involved actually before the end of the weekend. In that attempt, our attempt was to understand the situation and both offer supportive measures as well as investigate the incident and its impact on our school community. In addition, we were made aware of other students who were being impacted by the incident, and we've had discussions with those students and parents to make available our supports and services. I want to implore any students and/or parents of the students who experienced harassment, bullying, and/or discrimination to please share your concerns with a school principal, counselor, or social worker in order for us to offer support as well as issue discipline as indicated by our student code of conduct and policies. Students can also utilize Safe to Say to share concerns with our staff. Our administrators can and will address concerns if they know about those concerns. And oftentimes, it's been my experience that we're not made aware of the concerns to be able to address them. With that being said, we want to implore that we are in the loop and we are partnering with you to address those concerns together. While we oversee and supervise your beloved children each and every day, they do leave our doors. They're not with us 24/7, 365 days a year. And while we want to support, we have to partner because we share responsibility for the supervision and safety of all of our children. We will continue to follow Board Policy 103 related to Title IX and discrimination and Policy 249, which is relative to bullying and cyberbullying. These board policies govern the practices and processes utilized to address discrimination, harassment, as well as bullying. Our administrative team will continue to work day and night to address all forms of discrimination. They will continue to issue discipline and follow the processes set forth in Board Policies 103 and 249, while also showing compassion and support for those victims. We do not have tolerance for racial discrimination, but unfortunately, zero tolerance does not necessarily equate to zero incidents.
Thank you, Dr.
Almost.
Price. Oh, sorry.
Almost.
Oh, sorry.
And my apology, I'm over my
you're good.
5 minutes.
No, you're good.
I'm sure. I'm a firm believer that we do not end racism or racist acts with punishment alone. Rather, there are many proactive measures that we utilize to help address this unacceptable behavior. As examples, the district over the years has implemented second step programming from K through 8, which is a curriculum utilized to teach kindness, respect, resiliency, awareness, and emotional control. We also have included web and link crew, where upperclassmen participate in leadership training in order to transition students from elementary to middle school and middle school to high school. The programs have been extremely successful at creating a sense of belonging for new students that are entering our buildings. We've done trainings for bias and cultural responsiveness for a large majority of our staff. We also have available multicultural club, Avidum clubs, and that have a primary focus of helping all students feel a sense of belonging to our schools while also providing a safe space for our students to talk. These are just to name a few. With that being said, the recent incident is a reminder that there is still much work to be done. Our work must include student voice and the support of the student body to move forward. In fact, for this work to continue, it will require the support of the entire school community. We all agree that these types of racial incidents are unacceptable and need to stop. What we may not agree upon is how to make this happen. We must be committed to working together in determining solutions. And finally, I just want to remind everyone that we have many school and community resources that are available to us here in the Southern York County School District. Maybe more so than any other district I've been around. And please do not hesitate to reach out to us if at any time our counselors, our social workers, and even our contracted services can be here to be a support, to be available for any of our children. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. A few additional comments. I wanted to personally thank, I had a conversation with Dr. Bryson and Dr. Mullen during the week, and can't go into all the details because it deals with private conversations that they had, which I don't even know all the details. But I can say that they went beyond the requirements of policy. They did go above and beyond to address this situation. That doesn't mean they fixed every problem that can occur in the district, but as far as my awareness of the situation goes, and what I understand that they did, it was above and beyond, above their obligations under policy, and I wanted to thank both of them for that. And then I just wanted to make a comment about some things that I've heard when it comes to this. You know, I hear parents say, well, they didn't learn that at home, they must have learned it in the school. And the school might say, I don't know where they learned it in the school, they must have learned it at home. One of the problems is children today, there are a lot of other vectors that these things can come in. When I was a kid, you know, you had TV, movies, books, all these things were pretty well curated. You know, most of the time it was something my parents knew about, you know, and then you had school and the home. With the internet and with social media in particular, there are just so many other vectors, and I would implore parents, limit what your children have access to. Put limits on what they can, on what kind of messages they are receiving. It's going to be uncomfortable, but we've got to do that. And then once we control that, once we control those broader influences, then yeah, maybe we can be successful controlling the school environment, what kind of messages they're getting here and what kind of messages they're getting at home. Maybe we can control those things, but we've got to control those messages that they're receiving. So please, parents, it's something we can't do, and it's going to be a difficult task, but it's got to happen. And this blew up on social media, but it's a vector where things go, and it's a vector where things come, and a lot of it is not healthy stuff. So please, all right, thank you. All right, so on to, I have to announce a couple of meetings that we had. So we had an executive session following the last Buildings and Grounds meeting covering student discipline and safety. And we had an additional executive session earlier this evening covering safety and a contract negotiation. And then we had a personnel and policy meeting just before this meeting. All right, moving on to item 2.01, approval of the February 15th agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, okay. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? That motion carries. Moving on to item 3.01, approval of the January 18th, 2024 minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? That motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve the January 30th Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting minutes.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? That motion carries. And moving on to the student representative report.
Okay, so I have quite a few things to talk about. I know that the wintertime usually gets slow, dreary, so I tried to find some more fun things to talk about. The first is that we've had 7 students be selected to enter the final round for exhibition in the York Community Art Scholars Exhibition. So each of these students created some sort of art, and they submitted it, and they were selected by a panel of judges. So those following students were senior Bailey Abels, freshman Abby Apgar, senior Alyssa Fowler, who had 2 works make it to the finals, senior Michael Fox, senior Wyatt Guttridge, senior Mara Johnson, and senior Audrey Reeves, who also had 2 pieces make it into the finals. So there will be an award ceremony on February 22nd at 6 p.m. at the Apple Center Capitol Theater. And prior to that, at 5 p.m., there'll be an exhibition preview. So if you're interested, definitely go check that out. And then all of these students are eligible to win a $20,000 scholarship to York College if they attend the college for an art-related degree. And hopefully next board meeting, I'll be able to bring in some pictures of the artwork if you can't make it to the exhibition. I'll touch on sports just a little bit. We are in the winter postseason, and we're gearing up for spring sports now. We've had the girls basketball team, boys and girls swimming and diving, and then members of the boys wrestling team all qualify for postseason events that Ms. Liz will talk about later. Speaking of the girls basketball team, I did want to mention that they were selected as this year's Gretchen Swartz Sportsmanship Award. So this is voted on by the basketball officials chapter. And then for winning the awards, they're all qualified to earn a one-time scholarship. Last year, both of our girls and boys team were awarded $135,000. And just a little bit about this award. So it's named for a former York County basketball official who officiated games from 1981 to 1995. Her name was Gretchen Wolf Schwartz, and she died from leukemia in 1997. And the award has been handed out in her honor every year since 2001. And our girls have won the award 9 times now. So that's pretty cool. Today, we had an assembly at the high school. It was hosted by alumni Kara Wojcik. She is currently a certified counselor in the area. And there were several vignettes performed by students displaying different scenarios about struggling with mental health. And Kara was kind of there to discuss different healthy coping mechanisms and ways that you can deal with the various scenarios when it comes to struggling with mental health. And some of these examples included like encouraging students to eat more healthy, encouraging them to get a lot of sleep, to exercise, and then we also talked about the different resources that are available at the school, such as reaching out to counselors, teachers, things like that. The scheduling for the 2024-2025 school year is underway. I don't have to do that this year, so I'm excited. But counselors are meeting with individual students to discuss their courses for next year. The SHS band is currently on a trip in Orlando, Florida. So right now, well, as of a couple hours ago, they were running around Universal Studios, but during this trip, they get to participate in Universal Studios Music and the Art of Folly workshop, and they get to learn how to represent various events, storylines, visuals, and different things in movies through music, just as a lot of modern day musicians too. It's a really cool opportunity, and they actually had to apply to get to do it. So, and then the marching band members also get to participate and perform in a parade at Universal Studios. This one is probably my favorite thing. Battle of the Buildings is back. It's going to be in 2 weeks on February 28th. I'm sure Dr. Reppert will talk about it a little bit, but I specifically want to talk about that our high school's Warrior Council, in conjunction with Coats of Friendship, we're hosting a raffle. So some of the raffle baskets are going to be Stanley. It's like a raffle basket with Stanleys in them. There's a Lego raffle basket. There's one with gift cards from local businesses. But this isn't a normal raffle. In order to get tickets, you have to bring in used coats, hats, other winter apparels. And then all those items are going to be donated to Coats of Friendship, which is an organization that was started by a sophomore at our high school. And they give those coats out to people of need. So if you come to Battle of the Buildings, bring in the extra coat you got sitting in your closet. And lastly, on Friday, March 1st, the SHS Jazz Band is going to be hosting their swing dance again this year. It's going to be at Southern Elementary School. It's from 6 to 9 p.m. So if you don't have anything to do, it's a really nice night. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. I just wanted to, I'll ask you first. last month was board director appreciation month, and I thought it would be appropriate after the meeting to give you some recognition. So I sent you an email thanking you for your service to date. Would it embarrass you if I read that email? No? Okay. I didn't want to do it here in the board meeting without asking you, just in case it might embarrass you. Ms. Dunn, I wanted to personally thank you for your service these past 2 months. I can only imagine how intimidating it could be to sit at that table with over a dozen adults, many of whom have strong personalities that are certainly on full display. You've expressed your views with courage and professionalism. These are qualities that are difficult for schools to test or demonstrate quantitatively, but they are traits that will serve you very well. So, thank you. All right, moving on to item 5.03, the Susquehannock High School building project video.
5.01.
Oh, what, did I skip one? Whoops, oh, so sorry. Sorry, Len. 5.02, educational updates by our own Dr. Len Ruppert. No, did I, well, wow. I just had the wrong thing selected. Okay, let's go with update on elementary and secondary school emergency relief funding presented by district administration. I got the right one now, right?
You are correct there, President Henkel. At this time, we're going to have Dr. Hughes and Mr. Trevor Carrington give the Board of Community an update on the elementary and secondary emergency relief, or ESSERS fund, kind of an update where we were, where we are, because those funds, we're in the process of having them completed to be spent by September 2024. So.
Right, thank you, Dr. Reppert. So, all right, it works. So, Dr. Hughes and I will just walk through our ESSER plan kind of to date and our plan moving forward. So, the final part of this plan is on this board's agenda. So at the end, we will have some questions or some time for question and answering. So just to kind of walk through the original process, this, as we know, but just to remind everybody, it started as a result of the pandemic. So there were 3 main waves of ESSER funding. There was ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. They all kind of had their own little acronyms, but essentially the main priorities with the funding and then with the district's plan were to assist students impacted by the pandemic, add programs that could be maintained into the future, comply with any grant set-aside funds, so we'll talk about that in a minute, and then using the funds in a fiscally responsible manner. So we really wanted to make sure we understood and presented this as one-time funding. It is a lot of one-time funding. Some of our plan involved the phasing in of staffing, and there were some other recurring expenditures, but we'll talk through that process. And then really, not really shown here, and it hasn't been something we've had to do much in the latter couple of years, but at first it was really to help with the immediate response of the pandemic, because a lot of things were thrown at us. So we'll kind of show that with some of our future slides. So one of the things I mentioned were the reserves and set-asides. Part of that is to explain some of the rationale to the programming we had. So you can see in the future, we'll talk about it, we had after-school programming, summer school programming. So those were 2 required programs we needed to do, and they all have their kind of dollar amounts to go with it. Next up, we had learning loss programming. So there was a set-aside grant that was given to us, and there are a lot of different set-aside requirements and reservations we had to meet. They're shown up there. I won't go through them all. And then the last one was a big one through the ESSER 3 or ARP ESSER, and it was to combat the loss of instructional time or learning loss. That was a really big proponent through the ESSER funding. So the numbers are tiny. I believe you guys have printouts. But really what this slide is to show is just our budget, our first budget, which is that original budget column, the budget we presented last year as a revised budget, and then our proposed budget this year. So really, again, I won't go into every category, but I'll get some of the big ones. So staffing, what we planned on doing with staffing when we presented this plan initially was to look at those positions that we had budgeted before the pandemic. We ended up not funding them at that time because we didn't have a tax increase. We were very unsure with how things would go. So when we did get this large amount of funding, one of our priorities was restoring the positions that actually came out of that budget. The next one, and this is where we'll talk a lot about, Chromebooks is primarily a big number on there, and you can see that number has grown. And that number growing has kind of been our plan all along. So we knew there could be the potential that we had things that didn't really take off, or we didn't spend as much as we thought we would. So our backup plan, and really a big part of the plan, was to continue funding Chromebooks, because that was one of those things we would be funding anyway. Curriculum purchasing, so Dr. Hughes will talk about that a little bit later. Operations and PPE. So the beginning phase of this was PPE. We had a lot of needs to make our buildings safe for students. And then that has shifted more to an operations, keeping our buildings clean. Filters are in that. Digital Academy, so that really took off. At the beginning stage, we had, I think, 700 some students in Digital Academy that first main year of the pandemic. And as you can see, we didn't really know how that would shake out, and that number has gone down. Summer school, after school, those were the set-asides we talked about. Professional development, Dr. Hughes will talk through that more. Check and Connect, that's more a program that we kind of tried out, especially with learning loss, to help with the students there. And then at the beginning, we had to share some of our funds with the non-public. So really what this is just showing what our original budget is, the proposed budget, just how we plan on spending the rest of our money. So I will talk about a couple of these. So summer school and after school programming, those are coming below budget in our revised budget. So yeah, we've initially thought we'd spend $380,000, revised it down to $316,000, and it continues to go down to $244,000. And what that is, and the reason for the revisions, we are going a different path this year for summer school programming. So it won't really continue the way it has in the past few years. We weren't sure how that would go last year, so that's kind of the big reason. And then after school programming, it didn't really take off as much in the fall as it did last spring. So that number revised down just to kind of mirror what we know we will have to spend. HVAC filters. So when we initially bid that, it came in at a certain number. I think it was 30-something thousand the first time we had it. Then when we did it again, it was much lower, which is great to see prices coming down. So we were able to revise that budget and add an additional round still within that budget. And then custodial equipment, we did our second round I believe it was last board meeting or recently, and those numbers came in a little bit lower. We initially mirrored them after the first round, and they just didn't come in quite as high.
So as we looked at the professional development, we were very pleased last year. We had a lot of professional development that happened over the summer. And like life happens, we had teachers that were unable to attend because of last minute vacations, or a child got sick, or there were reasons why they couldn't come. So that had us coming in a little bit under what our professional development budget was. But we also slated for having more money spent toward our high reliability schools, that we were able to really focus in and identify just the main pieces that we needed, so we were able to save some money there. And then when you look at our science programming, we are so excited. Caroline, as you were talking about the Stanley thermoses, our science program, I just heard today, kids are learning about thermal energy with drink bottles. So we were like, we got to bring in those Stanley cups. But as we go through, we were very happy to be able to get our science program. That actually came in under our budget. So we had budgeted so that if we got a program for our K through 8 programming, it actually came in way under where we thought it was going to be. So we were very happy with that. So we started really doing some needs assessments, and that's what we'll talk about, where we kind of saw what we could be using some of this money to help continue to meet the needs of our kids.
And then, so those were the bigger, much below categories that we spent. There's, just to talk and highlight some other categories, they may have gone over their initial budget. Some technology, that didn't go over, but we're closer. So other tech, not including Chromebooks, that was pretty close to its budget. Intervention supports, those were a various amount of purchase we had to do. That one went a little bit over. Staffing was a little bit under, kind of projecting out that far in advance, pretty shocking. Like, we didn't have a bigger difference. And then Check and Connect, that was just a program, and it didn't start the time we expected it would. But after revising, that budget is coming in a lot closer than we thought.
So one of the things that we talked about is the idea that some of our budget came in under what we thought were going to happen. One of the things throughout this year, Friendship Elementary School had the opportunity this year to put in place a program called 95% Core Phonics Program. We've been really looking at that throughout the year and collecting lots of information as we go through. I have to give a lot of credit to our reading specialists who have been doing a huge amount of work looking at our foundations program with the 95% program. What we started identifying is that the 95% program is filling holes that we were identifying in our foundations program. So we're able to kind of marry those two together. And as soon as we saw that we had some extra funding, we started talking about we need to come to our board to talk about this program, this 95%. It has a very specific scope and sequence on phonological awareness and phonics. So it really helps identify, and there's reasons why you do each one of these pieces throughout each grade level. So we are looking to see, we were able to get that core reading program for 3 through 8, our Houghton Mifflin, but we didn't get anything for our K through 2. So that's where we were really looking. We do have some decodable text and science of reading materials that we purchased, but we didn't get a core program because we really wanted to see what was out there that would really meet our needs and see where we were with this. So that's where we're looking at coming to the board that asks for permission to be able to purchase for our other 2 buildings and for Friendship to have continued materials to move forward with our reading. Really focusing in on what our K through 3 students need to ensure that they're getting each one of the pieces to become strong readers. We know that is a core area. K through 3, the reading impacts everything that they do. It impacts math, it impacts science. So we really wanted to take and make sure that we've done a very thorough analysis of where they are. I will tell you, I went in and I've talked to some of the teachers that have been implementing this at Friendship. They sold me. They said, Kim, I feel like I have a better understanding of where my kids are with their reading. And that, from me hearing our teachers talk through that, we also will be having then, with permission of the board, doing a very good job this summer of using one of our flex days to allow our teachers to have in-depth training on what this program will help them to accomplish. So we want to give them the professional development to help make sure that they're implementing and able to move forward and really help our kids starting day one.
Right. So the second really big budget change we have, and first was Dr. Hughes, the reading part, and then the second is our Chromebook plan. So for better or worse, we do have to go back in time to explain why this is a plan and where we were before March of 2020. So in 2015-16, the high school went one-to-one with Chromebooks. The next year in 16-17, the middle school went one-to-one. And then in 1920, so the beginning of that year, we began a plan to kind of transition elementary into a one-to-one-ish model. So one-to-one for a handful of grade levels, 2-to-1, and then 3-to-1. So kindergartners, they don't really need a Chromebook every day. And you can share them between the classes because it's just really getting to learn them. Versus a 6th grader, you might be using it daily. Then we, in March of 2020, really had this unfortunate scenario where everybody went home, and they ended up being home for a very long period of time. So we ended up in a really fortunate situation. So that 15-16, that was the end of a lease. So for the 2019-20 school year, we actually had all of the lease devices that ended. We presented it to the board back then, and it was we got a very good rate on purchasing all 900 Chromebooks. So we really kind of lucked out and had 900 Chromebooks on the shelf that we could distribute in March of 2020. At that time, many districts were driving to every Best Buy, Walmart, everywhere they could to find devices, and we fortunately had them for all of our students. So we got into this one-to-one situation that we had been trying to understand how we could transition to that. Something that Mr. Hunt, the technology coordinator, and myself had been working on was a way to get ourselves out of leasing, because by getting away from leasing, you are saving on some interest costs, and just trying to understand how we could move the district one-to-one with kind of how we could get there. We looked into it by having to transition all students to remote in that March 2020. And then it was about 2 years ago at this point when we had our first ESSER presentation, not Dr. Greg and I, Greg Hunt, we presented our Chromebook purchase plan. So what that did was put in this implementation model where we had one big infusion of devices, which actually was this year, 23-24, and it got to the point where all students would have their device for 4 years. So first graders, fifth graders, and ninth graders all get a device every year. They have it for 4 years because a lot of research was done, and there's an ownership when you have your device for 4 years that the amount of repairs aren't near as great because you're taking care of your device, you're not giving it back, you're not getting the luck of the draw on getting a good Chromebook or one that was beat up because you have it for those 4 years. And then that fifth year, so when you have a graduating senior, it goes to kindergartners because they have much less use of a 5-year-old Chromebook. So that was a way we could really get every student getting a brand new Chromebook at some point in their career. And we could really do it without having too much of a budget impact because we had a big infusion with Chromebooks. So to explain kind of the cost side of this, our initial purchase was made in July of this year. In total, $651,000 was spent. We got about 1,600 Chromebooks, very round numbers, somewhere around $400 a device. We applied $400,000 of the grant funding to that purchase. We have our round 2 purchase coming July of this year. So our proposed plan, because we did have additional funding, and it was always our plan because it was that purchase we intended to make, so is to apply the remainder of the July 2023 purchase to the ESSER grant, so that would be $251,000. And then because this purchase will take place in July, we'll have a very good idea of what spending took place and where we're at to apply all unspent funds from our ESSER funding to this Chromebook purchase that occurs in July. Right now, we're thinking that'll be about $113,000, the amount applied. The rough estimate is the Chromebook purchase could come in somewhere around $250,000, just using a $400 per device estimate. So it was a pretty brief summary, but our next steps and then just questions. So the approval of the revised budget and the changes are on this board agenda for approval, or recommended for approval. Then the next part, we'll revise the grant application as necessary. We'll proceed with our spending plan with the goal of getting everything spent by June 30th, with the exception of Chromebooks, and then summer programming that could go into July. And that's pretty much it. So we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
I suppose a question a person might have is, of course, this is all ESSER funding, which is use it or lose it. So it certainly makes sense to use it. But of course, these systems of purchasing Chromebooks on an ongoing basis every several years, and I guess there are purchases every year. What is the expected ongoing annual expense associated with that?
So a rough estimate is about $250,000. And I say rough because, as we are all aware, prices fluctuate constantly. But grade sides fluctuate as well. So one of the big shifts we've made with our Chromebook plan, and it's still available to watch on the website. So if you go back, it's the March or February 2022 presentation. It's like right in the middle. I had to watch it to remember our plan. Or just remember all of the things. But one of the things, how we got there, is in the past we would buy Chromebooks by building and by, so we'd kind of come in and say, all right, there's probably going to be 750 elementary schoolers, so we need to buy this many, or 250 for this class. We're now able, the way we're purchasing, to look at actual class sizes and say, okay, in March 2024, what do we think 1st, 5th, and 9th grade will be next year? And we can purchase those devices. So we're purchasing a much more specific amount. We don't have to worry about class size changes. So roughly about $250,000 a year to answer your question, but can go up or down if we have a bubble or if we have a lower class size.
Thank you.
Yep.
To add to that too, one of the things when we first were going through this is loaner machines. So Trevor talked briefly about going from leasing to purchasing. What we found is that we have to have so many loaners because something may happen with the device and we need to make sure that we have devices to give back. So that's why we thought purchasing was a much better option because it allows us to then have those loaner devices. As we know, some devices may only last for 3 years, others are good for 6. So as we were working through that, we thought it made sense to move to purchasing.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Questions? All right.
All right, thank you.
All right. Item 5.02, Dr. Eppert, educational updates.
You sure?
Yeah.
Second.
I got it in the right place.
All right, you're back on track. All right, thank you, President Henkel, School Board. Just a couple overall comments. You know, I know many of us did pay attention to Punxsutawney Phil. Said that spring's right around the corner. We did have snow earlier this week, and I hear there's snow coming in tomorrow night. So hopefully the next few weeks, Mother Nature gets that snow out of the way. So spring weather is going to be here. Happy belated Valentine's Day to everybody. Going into my typical, going through the SAFE, supportive, and collaborative, Dr. Price and I had the opportunity to attend several tabletop drills facilitated by Officer Hansen. Tabletop drills is where Officer Hansen leads a scenario and all that attend kind of work through how to, you know, handle and respond to those situations. A lot of them are clearly realistic to what are going on currently in schools, but even more specifically to what's going on here. And if Officer Hansen is here, can he please come down to the podium? I'm just taking a guess that he might be here.
He's coming.
Oh, ironic you are here.
You're on the spot.
You knew that was happening, didn't you?
No.
I know. I just wanted to share with the public, today is National SRO Day. We are very appreciative of everything that Officer Hansen does. And though he's not an SRO, can D.O. Mendez please come down here? If he might be hanging out up top.
Here he comes.
By the chuckles, I think he might be up there. Oh, how you doing, D.O.? Okay, I won't call you down. But, you know, I really do think there's a lot of thanks and appreciation for these two gentlemen for everything that they do, not only assisting with the security and, you know, providing safety within the district, but a lot of the other unknown things that you don't see, serving the lunches, you know, going to the events, going to games, talking with students, talking to parents. They go way beyond what they do for security. So I just want to thank you both for all you do. Appreciate it. And lunch on me next Tuesday, okay? Right. Thank you both.
We'll do that.
So Carolyn did steal a lot of my thunder, so I'll keep it short. But we did have former grad, Carolyn Wojcik, come in. Awesome message. Students did an outstanding job with the vignettes. And then she followed up with a lot of different strategies that the students can use, practical strategies. Under the supportive, I want to thank all the parents that came out to conferences last night and this evening. Carolyn did mention about the Y case, the students that had their art on display. I had the opportunity to go there 2 weeks ago on February 2nd when everything first went on display. And not only our students, but students throughout York County just did an amazing job with their artwork. Congratulations to middle school student Jaden Gross for being a winner for the 2020-13 I Love My Country Because artwork. Her artwork will be featured in the 2024 wall calendar. It will be on display at the National Association of Counties in Washington, D.C. So congratulations goes out to Jaden. Under collaborative, each year staff have the opportunity to apply for the Southern York County School District's Innovation Grant for supplemental resources in the classroom. Following staff members were awarded grants that were announced on January 23rd. So congratulations goes out to Mrs. Jordan, Mrs. Taylor, and Mrs. Foster from Shrewsbury for being awarded a grant entitled Community Building. And also congratulations goes out to Mrs. DeLuca from Susquehannock High School for being awarded a grant for her project titled Boundless Bookworms. So we're looking forward to seeing how they're going to utilize those resources in the classroom. And a big thank you to the middle school, Dr. Bell and her staff. This evening prior to the board meeting, they had the 6th grade transition night, took advantage of all the staff being here. I had the opportunity to be in the major presentation before the students went around, and it was a packed house. So we do apologize for anybody that could not get parking. I did have an opportunity today to observe one school board member who was presented a book last month, and viewed him reading his book entitled Reading, Reading, Reading. For this board member, I'm not going to say your name, but can you please complete this following poem that you read today? Fire trucks are red, blueberries are blue.
You may be cute, but
It's something about being older than you.
I'm still older than you.
Yeah. Mr. Wilson did a fantastic job today at Shrewsbury Elementary, 2nd grade. The smiles on the faces of the students, but more importantly, the way you interacted with the students was absolutely awesome. So thank you for taking advantage of that. And I do know several other board members are scheduled to go into the other elementary schools. So for the ones that have not scheduled yet, please reach out to those administrators because Dr. Bryce and I would love to see you reading your books. I do have a bunch of reminders. School's going to be closed tomorrow and Monday. We do have several music events going on with the PMEA Regional Band Festival. Starts next Thursday through next Saturday, when they get back from their trip. Southern Elementary's Multicultural Night is next Thursday starting at 5 p.m. District Orchestra Concert, this is district-wide. 3 through 12 will be Tuesday, February 27th, starting at 7 p.m. As Carolyn talked about, the Battle in the Building is back on the 28th. So if you do want to see some awesome guest referees, myself, Dr. Bryce, and come cheer us on because referees usually get booed. But please come out and cheer us on as we watch all the schools participate as well as the students. So come out and cheer on your favorite staff members and referees. High School Musical will be March 5th through the 7th. And the title is again, Caroline?
I think it's later in the month, but it is Once Upon a Mattress.
It's Once Upon a Mattress, okay. And then spring sports start on March 5th and end of the market period, March 13th. Believe it or not, that's right around the corner. I can't believe we're almost through 3 marking periods. And Shrewsbury's Multicultural Night will be Tuesday, March 19th. So that's all I have this evening. So have a great month of February, or not. Choice is yours.
All right. Moving on to item 5.03, the Susquehannock High School building project video.
Project at Susquehannock High School. As construction continues, it's the district's goal to continue providing frequent updates and transparency. The district established an online forum to facilitate community questions, and we're excited to have the construction team answer those questions.
Can you explain the demolition process? demolition process of the building will be a lengthy process, probably a month long, to get the debris on the ground with going through recycle, truck material out, 640 loads roughly, 40 a day, and then once that's out, this ground pile will be brought over and put into place to build the new parking lot.
Can we watch the demolition?
Bulk demolition of this building is going to take 1 to 2 months over the summer. We will not have a place to safely stage or watch this happen. We will take lots of photos and videos.
What will the conditions of the campus be like at graduation? Will construction be complete?
Campus this year is going to look very similar for graduation as it does now, which will not impact graduation. We've had outdoor graduation the last several years during construction. New features will be able to be inside this year for graduation, as we'll have the main gym. Parking should be more than plentiful for our class. And we're looking forward to hosting class 2024 either in the stadium, hopefully, or in the gym for graduation with all their families and friends, which is something that past graduates have always said was important to them, that they graduate here on campus in the building that they got started with when they were 9th graders.
When will the project be finished?
January 2024, the Science Hallway was opened 6 months ahead of schedule. In March 2024, we were planning to have more second floor classrooms ready early. The entire construction project is scheduled to be completed in late fall of 2024.
For more information about the renovation and construction project at Susquehannock High School and to submit questions about the project, please visit the district's website at www.sycsd.org/construction.
Thank you. All right, moving on to public comment. Just as a reminder, when you come up, please state your name and municipality of residence, and please observe proper decorum, and everybody gets 5 minutes. All right. First one I have is Val Dennis.
Good evening. My name is Val Dennis, and I live in Shrewsbury Township. My husband and sons are alumni of the district. Our younger son is studying to work in the mental health field. This spring, our older son will be a captain in the U.S. Army and will also become a father to our first grandchild. I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Bryson and President Hinkle and empathize with the idea that it is challenging to know the extent of student behavior, whether it's happening in school or whether it's happening online, off school hours. There are many reasons for this. What I have observed is that it's important for students and families to know that they'll be heard and believed, and also that consequences that happen will impact not only the behavior of individuals, but also of the climate and the culture for our individual schools. On many occasions, I've heard the Southern York County School District referred to as a family. There is a deep sense of community. There are many instances of support for each other, and like any family, there are challenges. Families and communities have joy and connection and love. Families and communities can also have conflict, harassment, conflict avoidance, distractions, diversions, mental health struggles, addictions, and abuse. Families have economic struggles. My father can remember to the penny how much he saved for his first bicycle, for his first car. Neither of my parents grew up with indoor plumbing. We can sweep family and community challenges under the rug, or ignore them, or pretend they don't exist. We can also choose to go through challenges, listening, facing the realities of our community, understanding, looking at similarities and differences, finding common ground, options, and solutions. What do we talk about? What do we avoid talking about in our community? Are we talking with each other or talking over each other? We each have different experiences in life and different viewpoints. I chose to attend a coalition meeting 1 year ago with many of you here this evening because I want to understand. Because just like you, I care about our children and our teenagers. I care about their adult lives. I care about their education. After we watched Whose Children Are They? Together, we had a productive conversation about school discipline. We cleared up some misconceptions, and we learned from each other. And we are at a time when education, politics, social issues, religion, and economics are so intertwined that it appears impossible to talk about each of these separately or together. We seem to have come to an impasse. There are divisions. We are here at a school board meeting, a surprisingly and sadly tense place of underlying potential conflict. In a school cafeteria, where during the day raisins might just fly across the room, and the school staff just hopes that children will clean up their own place at the table. There's arguing and yelling and drama on social media that affects teaching and learning every day. People attempt to degrade each other on social media and in person. The drama on phones is 24/7, impacting teaching, learning, administration, the rest of life, often wasting enormous amounts of time. What if we put down our phones and make eye contact? What if we listen to each other even when opinions seem far apart? We are examples to our children and teens. We show them how to lead healthy adult lives. We are capable of having civil discussions about education and about life in general. For many years, I have worked with students, school staff, and community groups on how to have conversations about topics that might be difficult. What I'm about to say is 100% not affiliated with the Southern York County School District, and the idea is 100% about education in our community. I would like to meet with anyone who is willing on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. at the Mason-Dixon Diner starting this Tuesday. The purpose is a face-to-face time to discuss education and all that is connected to education. We will choose topics together. What do we want for our children and teens? What do we hope for? How do we focus our time on their learning and safety and health? I spoke with the manager of the Mason-Dixon Diner. He is okay with this idea of a group of people from all sides meeting to talk about the importance of our schools. I realize that a weekly meeting at a diner to talk about education during a time of powerful division may seem naive. I may be having a slice of pie and coffee by myself this Tuesday at 7 o'clock, and that's okay. Coffee and pie are always a good thing. Am I naive? Perhaps. And given the extent and underlying tensions in our community, what other options do we have beside genuine conversation at this point in order to move forward as a community? The purpose of meeting together is to truly listen to and begin to understand each other's views as we work together to support the education of the next generation. I hope to see you on Tuesday evening at 7 at the Mason-Dixon Diner. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cummings. Dennis. Natalie Borer.
Natalie Bohr, New Freedom. My speech tonight is beyond the scope of a political viewpoint. So I want all political views to be set aside while I speak for a moment. Sorry, I'm nervous. I nor my kids want your pity. We want change. We're talking about the mental health of young minds. Why are victims being victimized? Why are my children, like many others, being victimized twice? First, they are bullied and criticized due to their race, culture, and/or family diversity. They become victims from the school administration, which I don't think is intentional, but I want to assume it's because the school administration doesn't know how to handle it properly, which requires a policy change. You may be asking yourself, what does she mean? These horrific behaviors occur in our school system, and the school wants to remove the victim, the child that's the victim, and uproot that child and change their class and/or transportation. Why does my child have to change buses or transportation to be inconvenienced? Why isn't the bully inconvenienced and made to make these changes? So I ask, why are my children and other black and brown students being victimized twice? I want to take you back a minute for our experiences here. One of my children dealt with a lot of racist remarks at Shrewsbury. I ended up homeschooling him later on due to, protecting his mental health. Ended up pulling him due to a racial bully who told him he was black cancer and should die and literally should go home and kill himself. Mind you, this was witnessed by his TSS on several occasions. Again, Shrewsbury failed to protect my son by allowing this student still around my kid. Once my youngest started school, he and my daughter rode the same bus. Comments from the white kids, "You must be bastards," or foster kids, "You look different." A sixth grader asked my son, had he taken a bath today? And he said, yeah, innocently. My daughter said, "Why would you ask him that?" He said, "His skin's dark, it looks dirty, he needs to scrub harder." She said, "He's mixed, he's black." He said, "Yeah, that's gross, he needs to scrub it off." Now mind you, this is his first week on the bus in kindergarten in this school district, and we've been dealing with this for 12 years. Imagine how he felt at 5. She's been called an N-lover, he's been called the N-word, too many times to count, and much worse if you can even fathom that. Southern stated they were talking to the parents and the children and using it as a teachable moment. How many teachable moments do they get, and when does it stop? So rather than the administrators making the bullies ride a different bus or not allowed to ride at all, my kids had to sit up front of the bus to try and stop the targeting, but it didn't stop, it continued. So in order to protect their mental health, they became drop-off and pick-up kids, till this day. Once my kids weren't on that bus anymore, the bullies, unfortunately, were in the neighborhood and started to attack them in the neighborhood. So I had to involve Southern PD's finest in order to have them legally banned from the property into which we live. So now they don't feel safe at home, they don't feel safe at school. How many times do they need to be victimized? Last year, when my kids returned to school once COVID calmed down, I had spoken with the school administrators about the history of the racial harassment on the bus and would prefer my kids not to be on that bus and make sure my oldest didn't have any classes for her senior year with one of the children. And what did our school do? They wanted to make my children's bus stop several blocks away and change her classes, which would have affected her senior schedule. So I had made the school change her classes back. She dealt with it, she stayed separate, and she maintained it. The school did put a safety plan into place, which created another issue. The teachers, instead of addressing the principal to put the safety plan in place, addressed my children instead, which brought it out in class in the hallway.
1 minute remaining.
I will say that a mother raising one young woman and 2 amazing young biracial black men in this society we live in. You know, it's hard, and maybe I'm nobody to you, but maybe with what I have to say will help you make the needed policy changes. To hold these hateful bullies accountable, the comments are never a joke, and we are no longer accepting 1 and 2 day suspensions or teachable moments. But I'm going to end this with one last question. Why are my kids and so many other black and brown kids victimized twice? When are the bullies going to be held accountable and put in an inconvenience? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borer. Leanna Fieser.
Leanna Fieser, Shrewsbury Township. Last month, I stood here and said that you, members of the school board, are not listening. Several of you claimed you are, then proceeded to read lengthy prepared statements showing that truly you are not. Several weeks ago, school board members received a statement from the small but proud Conestoga Susquehannock tribe stating their opinions about the use of the warrior head logo. A tribal elder also expressed interest in speaking with the board. I don't see her listed on tonight's agenda. Fortunately, she was able to speak with a local newspaper, so we know some of what she would likely say if she were here. To quote from the official statement, "Retiring a mascot is not eradication. Eradication is the term we associate with the historical atrocities our ancestors faced, almost leading to extinction. Our modern tribe still grapples daily with the dominant narrative of our eradication. The mascot, rather than preserving our survival, replaces our living tribe with a historical relic. The Susquehannock Indian mascot today holds more institutional power and recognition than our own tribe in the very county we have called home since time immemorial. Challenging that reality is not eradication, and preservation of that reality is not educational." I'll interrupt the official statement to quote NAGA, the board's favorite source to back up their claims, a group who operates under the phrase educate, not eradicate. They say, "No leader, tribe, academic, or political organization speaks for rank and file Native opinions." No one except for NAGA, of course. When shown the statement from the Conestoga Susquehannock tribe, they said, "Tribal leaders don't represent tribal members." The Susquehannock tribe is currently listed as extinct Native American tribe. While there are a significant number of indigenous people alive today of Susquehannock ancestry, the Susquehannock as a distinct cultural entity are considered extinct. What did the Susquehannock just say about grappling daily with the dominant narrative of their eradication? This is NAGA doing some eradication right here. They should probably spend more time on education and less time on lawsuits, but I digress. The Conestoga Susquehannock said the warrior head logo holds more institutional power and recognition than our own tribe. In the words of tribal elder Andrea Ligon, they don't know who we are, yet they have a representation of what they want without any regard or thought towards us. So what we have is an overwhelming majority white group of people demanding ownership of a symbol representing an extreme minority and a school board that enthusiastically supports that position, despite being told to their faces by Native and other minority voices how things like the logo perpetuate ignorance and enable racist behaviors. And we wonder how things like the social media incident over the weekend happen. Look at the might makes right example being set. Last meeting, Katie Eisenach told you that use of the warrior head logo is the equivalent of identity theft. The district does not have permission to use the Susquehannock culture and religion in the way it has. And indeed, the statement from the Susquehannock says, York County's indigenous people do not need a mascot to represent them. And the tribe stands by the decision to remove the Native American mascot, aligning with the principles of respect, understanding, and cooperation. And they encourage the SYC school board to prioritize these values in shaping the educational environment for all students. Unlike board members, we don't each get 15 minutes to monologue. So for anyone who actually cares to learn more about why the tribe is against the warrior head logo, the full statement can be found multiple places on Facebook. Suffice to say, if your argument in favor of the logo is based on respecting the history of the Susquehannock in our area, your position is objectively wrong. It is time for you to learn more and do better. I call on the board now, as I did via email on January 23rd, to hold an emergency vote to halt all efforts to reinstate the warrior head logo and to place on next month's agenda a vote to permanently retire said logo. It is time to listen to the voices you continue to hurt. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fieser. Katie Weber-Poe.
I'm Katie Weber-Poe, and I am from Glen Rock. I've been reviewing the curriculum draft. It's probably not what it's actually called, but it's how I'm remembering it. And I keep running across this commitment to safe, supportive, and collaborative school environments, to prioritize well-being and security of every student, to foster a supportive community for both educators and learners, so that for every individual to feel valued, respected, and empowered to thrive. Paraphrased. What I'm hearing from the community and what I heard last meeting is that there's a disconnect there. People here are not feeling safe. The foundations of safety, and I speak on this professionally, I'm a mental health therapist. I specialize in adolescent mental health and trauma treatment. I've been doing this for 16 years. The last 4 have been particularly hard. What we need for safety is trust. Students need a trust that they will be kept safe from harm, both physical, emotional, and educational. They need to feel a sense of belonging, to be valued as a whole person, and to have their efforts acknowledged and respected. They need to be validated, to have their experience acknowledged, accepted, and honored. What I saw in the outline that did concern me is that there was a couple of things, but one I really wanted to focus on tonight was the blip about suicide awareness. I'm a little concerned that that verbiage isn't quite meeting the level of crisis that we're experiencing. So what I would like to do is take a few minutes to just kind of make sure that parents and the board really understands the problem at hand. There has been a 62% increase in adolescent suicide between the years of 2007 and 2021. 50% of young women and girls and 29% of young men and boys report persistent feelings of hopelessness and sadness. This is nationally. So what does that mean here in Pennsylvania? In 2021, there was a Pennsylvania Youth Survey. It happens every 2 years. 10.9% of 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders have attempted suicide statewide. Here in York County, that number is 12.5. 41.5 students report feeling depressed for 2 or more weeks. This is clinically significant for a diagnosis of depression and a number of other mental conditions. They have reported that life wasn't worth living, that they are not feeling good enough, and that they're feeling like failures. The youngest person last year to commit suicide or complete suicide was 11 years old. We have a serious issue here. And my fear is that the action steps don't quite go enough. Like, suicide awareness is important, but we also need to include suicide prevention. We need to include trauma-informed training for all staff. It sounds like there was some action to bring more awareness to students and have students have helpful coping skills, and that's really important, but these are adolescents. Their brains are not really in the position to always be making good choices, and they need adults around them who are trained in trauma responsive care.
1 minute remaining.
The risk factors that we see that I think are significant here are previous attempts, family history, lack of acceptance by family, community, and peers around sexual orientation, identity, and disability. There's stigma around accessing help. There's barriers to help. I know every single counselor I know, nobody has room on their docket. We have been overworked for a number of years. We have to address discrimination and racism. It's here, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. And I think it's actually pretty important to point out that racism very much was a part of bringing that logo back. If you think that it's okay to take someone's appearance and make it your logo when they're asking you not to, that is racism. And it might be hard to sit with that and acknowledge that, and it might bring up some uncomfortable feelings. And believe me, I get that. I've had to deal with some of this stuff in my own life. But it is important to be brave enough to do that, to break down these barriers and say enough is enough. These kids' lives are more important than maybe my political identity. Thank you.
Thank you. Peggy Kopp.
I'm Peggy Kopp, New Freedom Borough. So, as we are very much aware, an incident occurred over the weekend where a student within our school community posted a racial slur on social media. It was directed towards a black classmate. And while I know this incident did not occur on school grounds or during school hours, we do know that our minority students have not been safe from similar remarks during the school day. As we have heard tonight, we've read in articles, and as many of these students have courageously come forward at board meetings, even as recently as last month, to tell their stories about being targets of derogatory and discriminatory remarks during the school day. I know the testimony of these students is really hard to hear, as most of us don't want to believe that that is actually happening here, that yes, it does happen at Susquehannock High School, at the middle school, at the elementary schools. But this latest incident is yet another reminder of how important it is that we actually hear these students, that we believe these students, and that we act to reaffirm our district's commitment to fostering a learning environment that is inclusive, equitable, respectful of all individuals, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic background. And I think that this most recent incident reminds us of many of our obligations as a school community. For example, I think that this most recent incident once again proves why we need to continue advocating for better and more effective diversity, equity, and inclusion in our school community. This cannot be an initiative for which we just check a box and wash our hands of the responsibility. I think this incident once again demonstrates why we need to continue the work of equipping our students with the skills and knowledge necessary to navigate complex social relationships, manage conflict, cultivate healthy relationships with their peers, by increasing our support for social and emotional learning at all grade levels. This incident once again reminds us that we must actively recruit teachers, administration, staff members, and board directors from diverse backgrounds to better reflect the growing diversity of our student body and our community. Diverse representation not only enhances the educational experience for students, but it also serves as a powerful symbol of inclusivity and belonging. This incident once again emphasizes the need for school libraries at all levels that prioritize diverse authors and voices in their collections, ensuring that students have access to literature that reflects their own identities and experiences, as well as those of their peers. And I think that this incident once again illustrates the value of bringing speakers from diverse backgrounds and experiences to our schools, providing students with opportunities to learn from and engage with individuals who represent a variety of viewpoints and identities. And this incident once again reminds us just how important it is to support a wide variety of extracurricular clubs, including groups such as Alliance, the Multicultural Club, Unified Sports, Avidum, Web, Link, so that all students can find a safe space to belong and to learn from the experiences of others that they might never otherwise have had an opportunity to interact with. I think that we can continue to listen to our students and our parents tell us that change is needed, and yet enact policies at the district or school level that either do not support tolerance and acceptance of diversity or even actively discourage it. I think we must be mindful of the fact that every decision made in this room and at the school level sends a message about what we stand for or do not stand for as a school community. A climate of inclusivity and acceptance does not just happen because we wish it would or hope that it will. It has to be fostered, it has to be nurtured, and it has to be prioritized every day because every student in our district deserves to feel safe, deserves to feel valued, and empowered to thrive. I think that hate has to have no tolerance here at Southern York County, and ignorance has to have no tolerance here in Southern York County. Thank you.
Brad Doberman.
Brad Doberman, Shrewsbury Borough, representing the Shrewsbury Fire Company, and I have Kurt Holloway with me from Rose New Freedom Fire Company. Just saw that the tax credit approval is on the agenda tonight, so just wanted to take a couple minutes and say thank you to Rachel, Sue, and Trevor for their extraordinary patience with working with the fire departments to get these papers in. It's probably more difficult than working with students. But one of our neighboring school districts just passed this. I think we were the first one in the county. A neighboring school district just passed it, and one of the requirements they placed on the fire departments was to come back within 1 year and explain how it helped. And I think 1 year is probably a pretty difficult benchmark to hit, but we did this about a year and a half ago, and we just now submitted our second year for this tax credit. So if my math is correct, last year we would have submitted about 55 for the 4 fire departments and 2 ambulances. This year I believe it's 70 members. So the math is correct?
It is 70, yes.
What's significant about that is this program started at the end of the year in 2022. And one of the rules in the program that we have is you have to be on board with that department for a full year before you're eligible. So people that joined during 2023, they're not eligible for this. So that 15 number improvement was people that were already existing members of these 4 fire departments. So this program, in conjunction with the other programs we're working on, is bringing up that participation level. And where that's important is we're turning that corner from losing volunteers, losing activity from our volunteers, to starting to bring that up. And the program that we have in place with Southern York County, the criteria, it's one of the hardest ones I've seen. And I've dealt with 7 municipalities with where our members live. This is one of the hardest ones. So getting these members more active is going to prolong that period that we have to pay people for emergency services. And globally, in our school district, that helps all the taxpayers. So thank you. And we'll loiter around in case there's any questions.
Thank you. Brian Kopp.
Good evening, Dr. Bryson, Dr. Reppert, Dr. Mullen, and all the other educational professionals that are here. Appreciate your work. You've done a lot of great work. To the 7 of 9, holy mackerel, look at the environment and the culture that is going on here, guys. We have 4 armed police officers here that could be doing other things, but they're here in a school cafeteria. My wife just spoke, and I'm afraid you're not listening. I saw some board members not listening. You should listen to your community. I have a newspaper article to read to you concerning our school environment. We've talked about this tonight. We're going to talk about it more. On a recent Saturday, 2 Susquehanna high school teens, one black and one white, were watching a movie. One of the boys posted an innocent message about their afternoon on Snapchat. Later that day, a white female student allegedly responded via Snapchat with a selfie and a racial slur, "Ooh, One of the boys responded asking why. Snapchat logs show that she responded that her comments were for gits and shiggles. Funny. She added, "It's not that deep, bro." The exchanges drew attention across several social media platforms and resulted in a police investigation. But members of the Southern York School District community say that this kind of incident is commonplace here. The exchanges "We are not surprised," said one mother who has 3 students in our district. 4 mothers who spoke to the York Dispatch asked to remain anonymous out of concern for retaliation from the school board, and the wider community. A parent feels that. They say Southern York school officials allowed a culture of intolerance to take hold, alleging that administrators ignored repeated complaints about racism and bullying in the schools. That was before the elected school board voted last month to reinstate the stereotyped image of an indigenous man as the district's logo. You paying attention? The stories of 4 mothers, all who have black or multiracial students enrolled in the school district, were echoed by a Native American mother during the most recent mascot controversy. She noted that her son hides his braided hair at school due to the bullying he receives over his heritage. School officials, including every elected school board member, did not respond to the dispatch's request for comment. The district did provide a letter that was sent to parents and guardians Monday discussing its policies related to discrimination and cyberbullying. According to Dr. Bryson's letter, the Southern York Regional Police Department is investigating the allegations related to the Snapchat messages.
1 minute remaining.
He noted that I'm not going to get through this. In a written statement, the NAACP's York County branch said that such incidents not only impact students' academic performance, but also their mental health and overall quality of life. These are our kids. Pay attention. The The mother of the black teen who was the subject of the Snapchat messages said her older son was himself the subject of racial animus inside Southern New York schools. She said that this behavior shouldn't be taking place in 2024, and she's right. Why is this going on here? Why are you making decisions that allow this to continue and perpetuate this culture?
Thank you.
The family complained to the school.
Sorry, that was time.
The mother, excuse me?
That was time.
I didn't get a 1-minute warning?
Yeah, she gave you one. Yeah.
This is printed. You can read it.
Thank you.
You can tell me to shut up, but you used to do this.
You can sit down.
This is you need to pay attention.
All right.
You need to pay attention.
Sir, your time's up.
Sir, your time's up. If you don't sit down, I'll have to have you removed.
Thanks for paying attention, Nathan.
All right. Bob Betts.
Good evening, Bob Betts, Shrewsbury Township. Man, let's keep the tension going. So I, like all of us, got an email earlier this week that Dr. Bryson read, I think, all of it earlier, but there's a couple paragraphs I wanted to read tonight. The first one, I'm going to paraphrase, but it was over the weekend the district learned about the inappropriate comments that students have posted online. It goes on to say this incident is in direct opposition to the values and principles that guide our district's mission and vision. Paragraph 2, the district is working with our school resource officer and Southern Regional Police Department to actively investigate the incident. Our priority is to provide support to the victim and assess what measures will be taken to address the situation. So I am grateful that the district had the conviction to put this information out to the public, to show some transparency. We've been asking for this for a long time. Randomly we get it, sometimes we don't. But I'm grateful that this event was shared with all of us so that we can all effectively speak to our kids about it. I'm grateful that the district is offering support and services to families involved in these matters, and I hope any other matters brought to their attention that arise in the district. But the email, as I read it, creates some questions for me. When there was a teacher accused of sexually assaulting a student in the buildings just a few months ago, the district remained silent. And once the community found out about the incidents, the district stated that they remained quiet on the issue as it was an ongoing active investigation, and the possibility existed that sharing the info prematurely could hurt the investigation. That statement was made months after the alleged investigation. If I reference back to the letter, it sounds like this incident is under active investigation, so I don't quite understand why the two don't correlate. However, just a few weeks ago, our children had an FID day due to inclement weather. And on that first FID day, it was reported to this district that an unknown user logged into a class on Google Meets and displayed pornography for the other children in the class to hear. I'm curious if the district was happy to have this information brought to their attention, as they have not shared it yet to date. When the district was asked why they haven't shared the information, similar statements were made that there's an active investigation ongoing, and I would assume we don't want to jeopardize that investigation. What's the difference between all of these items? All of these items are heinous things that are happening in and around our district, yet we seem to be only choosing to bring to light issues that maybe we don't feel we have any culpable liability in. When they don't happen in the building, we seemingly are okay talking about it. But when things happen in the building, we're keeping it quiet. And all while appearing to suppress blatant sexual misconduct that's occurring in our buildings and now on our children's Chromebooks. These culprits are being given access to our homes, to my children in my home. But still nothing's been shared about it. Do we as a district not feel this incident is in direct opposition to the values and principles that guide our district's mission and vision, as we've referenced above? Can anyone tell me how any of this makes sense? Why do we share some and not all? If we're going to share none, share none. If we're going to share at all, let's share all. I have an idea on why these things are happening. John 3, verses 19 to 21. This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people loved darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth, thank you, comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of their Creator. We need to decide as a district if we are going to live in the light or continue to operate under the darkness of night. The days of suppression need to end. I spoke last month about policy being loose, for lack of a better term. I would implore us as a district to revise policy, to implement policy that creates a system where these types of things cannot go unspoken of. Thank you.
Sierra Y.
Good evening. My name is Sierra Y. I live in Shrewsbury, Pennsylvania, and I have 3 children, unfortunately, in this district. I'm going to cut my speech a little short because I want to finish the article that the other gentleman tried to share. But I want to bring up the 2 topics that my children have been expressing to me even before this incident on Saturday, the racial incident on Saturday. My children, the books, The Kill a Mockingbird, Of Mice and Men and Fences, has the word, the N-word throughout the entire book. This brings multiple opportunities for racial comments, racial jokes in the classroom, in Southern York County School District walls during instruction time. My children have directly and indirectly been called nigger in the classroom, have been objects thrown at them in the classroom. I hear, oh, this is just an isolated incident. Saturday was not an isolated incident. And I'm going to say, I know I shouldn't, but I was one of the 4 in the article, and that's why I want to read it, because these are things that happened to my children. And I did remain anonymous in the article, but no, I want y'all to hear my voice, see who I am. A lot of y'all know who I am and my children, and it needs to stop. And I'm gonna let you know, if one of my children get a Snapchat of any racial things, it's gonna go viral again, and I'm not taking it down. I don't care who asks whoever, I'm not taking it down. Okay, I don't care if the person say they're suicidal or not, I'm not taking it down. It's gonna keep going, because this community needs light shed on it. It needs awareness. It needs accountability. It needs change. And I'm tired of it. My children, emotional, psychological, physical, y'all don't know what y'all doing to my children. And like I told Dr. Mullen last year, I'm building a lawsuit on this community. So y'all need to stop. Do what you need to do. Okay? It's been lawsuits around the country. I've been talking to people. Y'all need to stop. Not only are my children being affected, I'm being affected. Look at me. I'm distressed. My children are distressed. They have to go through these walls 5 days a week, every day. If they're not directly or indirectly being called a nigger, a monkey, a watermelon head, a mutt, a Oreo, they're hearing their peers. So whoever's listening to this, I'm glad it's on camera, it's going on. It's not an isolated incident, and it needs to stop. Or some of those tax dollars that I'm paying and everybody else in this room is paying is going to be paying for that lawsuit. This is your warning. Oh, and one other thing, Black History Month. It's February. Black History Month is a nationally recognized month around the world, except for this district. That's a problem. I have Black and brown kids in the school district, along with other parents. It is imperative that Black American achievers, inventors, are taught to my children and others. That's what the problem is. Y'all keeping it hush. That CRT shit, bullshit, is bullshit, or whatever it's called. Is it CRT? I don't even know what the shit is called. It's bullshit.
1 minute remaining.
A third mother of a biracial, am I at the right part? Okay. A third mother of a biracial child recounted an incident in kindergarten in which an older student asked her son if, we already did the bathe one. She spoke on that. She already spoke on it. Let me get to my part. Well, I'll just tell you. In the 6th grade last year, because it's in the article too, my son was called nigger. First of all, was called nigger in 1 week. And Shrewsbury did not offer my son to do a Title IX. I had to call the board and ask what the racial and discrimination policy was. And someone from the office made sure 2 weeks later the Title IX was filed for my child. This year, 2 Title IXs have been filed for my same son. He's in the 7th grade now. In the cafeteria, this actual cafeteria we stand in right now, please let me finish, and this is one last story. This actual cafeteria that we're standing in right now, he was sitting at his table. 2 little boys, I'm sorry, they came to him and said, in 1962, America, they took the fun out of America. Abraham Lincoln took the fun out of America. And they started saying racial jokes and slurs, and he asked them to stop. They continued, so he moved his seat, like I told him to another table. So they got louder, so all the other kids can hear them. And started saying racial jokes and racial slurs. Please talk to y'all children. Like they said, please, this is a cry for help. Y'all damaging our children. It needs to stop. It's 2024. It needs to stop, please.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Does anyone have any burning comments that they've, any responses to anything that was said? I know there's a lot there. We can bring it up later if after we've had a chance to digest public comment if we need to.
I do want
Yeah.
to say a couple of things. So I'm absolutely touched by a lot of things that are said in this room every month. And Mrs. Y's testimony is very difficult. You know, I know in my personal family, we're Christian people. You know, we never needed to teach our children about race because God tells us that we're all His people, all one. And you're to respect and value all of us and every gift and talent that we have to bring to the table. And the people that are in your life, you love them because of their heart and their character and who they are. And I know and have learned in these 2 years that I've served, certainly not as many as Mr. Hawley, but I've learned that the administration and the superintendents love these children with every bit of their being. And I'm sure it hurts them just as much to hear it as it touches me. But I also know that we receive communications, we do, and we get disciplinary reports, and we see what is reported And I surely understand the pain that is being relayed. I can feel it. But I can also see that our administration is doing as much as they can to talk about these things and bring light and follow the policies that are written that are very strict about these infractions and do not want any student to feel unsafe. So as much as it pains me to hear about these situations and that they're being reported and that there's a feeling that nothing is being done, I do wonder from the administration how much more they can do. The incidents are definitely not welcome, but they are also, the reports that we see do not align with the amount of public comment that we receive stating that these are happening. It seems like from the pulpit, with all of the communications, I want honesty, I don't want any inflammatory verbiage, but at the same time, how can we quantify what's going on if we're not seeing it in the reports? And we want to make sure that if something is going on, folks are saying something. We've got Safe to Say, we've got all of our administration open and willing, all of the staff, to hear what these students are going through. I don't want them to go through it. None of us do. I can't imagine there's one person on this board that wants any student to go through what we're hearing from that. And I'm sorry, the time for public comment is finished, but I'm happy, if you want to stay, I'm happy to talk.
Okay. We'll get, okay.
Okay.
All right.
I've worked closely with the school system when it comes to my children, and I have reported it to Dan Chowski, Hollinger. I've talked to Bryson when he was assistant superintendent. I've talked to him when he was the principal at the middle school. I've been here. No one ever spoke to me about a Title IX. And you talk about, excuse me, I've never been to one of these meetings before, because this hits home for me, and it's finally an open platform to discuss it. But I'm going to tell you, when you say you don't know what else to do, stop victimizing my black children twice. Stop removing them and uprooting them from their classroom, making them change transportation. Hold the other kids accountable. Make them change their classes. Make them change their transportation.
Yeah.
Those are things that need to be taken into consideration with all due respect.
No, I understand.
This is the first time I've shown my face here. And for me to show my face here, I'm done. I am done. My one son is a triathlete for this school, and he gives his blood, sweat, and tears to it. She gave her blood, sweat, and tears to it. And I've got another one giving his blood, sweat, and tears into the chemistry and history department at the high school. I've got 2 more coming out of here. And I'm done. I am done. Dr. Bryson, something has to give, sir. It's got to give.
Ms. Borer, I just wanted to mention that for those who said I'm not listening, I wanted to personally thank you for giving me information that I can actually follow up on. Some of the things you mentioned are, I have to get the information, I have to find out what's going on, but it's actionable. So thank you. Because actionable information I can do something with, and I've got notes, and if my notes aren't adequate, I will be reaching out to get more details from you. I wanted to also thank Ms. Dennis for her comments that were not presumptuous. Okay, sorry, I thought you were over there before. I thought you were behind the podium, but I wanted to thank Ms. Dennis for your comments. I think this is the way that we need, finding common ground, recognize that we do care about our children. The accusations that the people up here don't care about these issues, it's simply not true. We know people who are affected by this, who are our good friends, and we absolutely care about it, and we are trying to get into it. I will say, well before this incident, well before this meeting, before this incident occurred, I've been talking to Dr. Bryson about getting Mr. Rogers into our elementary schools, because I think that approach to how kids interact with each other is highly effective. I think a lot of kids who grew up on Mr. Rogers, they just have a better attitude toward these things, a better way of dealing with these things, and he was a real pioneer. I also just wanted to mention for Ms. Feaser's comments with this Conestoga Susquehannock tribe. They are not on tonight's agenda. They did not, in fact, ask me to be on tonight's agenda. I reached out to them on January 24th, which was immediately after seeing the letter that they posted. And we have had a back and forth. It's been difficult to get everybody together that they want to have for a conversation. But I don't know if everybody's responded. We may have something this Monday. I think maybe we're waiting on one person to respond. But I am looking to have that conversation, and I reached out multiple times. I reached out, didn't hear back. I used their contact form when I didn't hear back. Heard back shortly after receiving their contact form. I emailed within minutes of receiving that. Didn't hear back for several days. When I hadn't heard back for several days, checked in again to see, can we still do this? So I've made a very good faith effort, and it looks like it's going to yield fruit this next week if everybody can get together. But I am certainly looking to talk to them and get their perspective. That's, I believe, all I had. Anybody else?
Yeah, a couple of things. I was also very touched by a mother's love for her children, mothers' love for their children, and definitely desire to see us have a more focused approach on these things. I know that discipline has been something that, when I stood at that podium for years, was something that was always very important to me. And at the same time, the years that I stood at that podium, I may have also felt like I was not being listened to. But I would say I am listening. I may not always agree, or we may not always agree, but that does not mean I'm not listening. I would also like to thank Val for her opportunity to have some open conversation. I think we'll have to be careful not to have 5 of us there, but I do appreciate that very much for putting that opportunity out there, and have had many civil conversations with you on tough issues in the past. I would also like to say that I agree we need to have a better process of having open communication when difficult things happen in our school. I'd like to agree with Mr. Betts that we don't have a very good approach to that, and it is something that I have been advocating for, a better approach to that. And I'd also like to thank Mr. Doberman. I'm excited that he's seeing, by my numbers, about a 28% increase in volunteers in our EMS and fire service. That is, from my perspective, tax deductions well used to see those individuals being able to volunteer their time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, I have a few things. I wanted to extend my thanks to Mrs. Dennis. I think that what she said, in the humble way that she said it, I would like to actually recognize what it cost you when we were private citizens to come to a meeting that we were holding, and to be the only one to come to a meeting like that.
it's intimidating. It takes a whole heck of a lot of courage, and thank you for doing that. That was huge. And we had really, really productive conversations, and we realized that we agreed on a lot of things, and there wasn't the difference of opinion that maybe we thought there might be. So thank you for that. And I, for my part, will absolutely be there on Tuesday, so thank you. For Mrs. Natalie Borer, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I'm hearing is that you want policy changes, and that the line that you said that stuck with me was, why should your children be the ones to have to be removed from situations when the bullying goes unnoticed and continues, and they're not the ones that are being inconvenienced, but your children are? That sticks with me. That does not seem right. It's the opposite of right. I will personally be looking at policy and see from that end what it is that I can do. So thank you for letting us know. And Mrs. Way, I believe that yours was very similar with that. It concerns me that Title IX was not offered, and that's a conversation that I would like to have. It's reprehensible that any student, any child should have to go through the struggles that you were documenting, and I'm personally sorry for that. And I'm sure I'm...
I want to clarify. So some of the incidents were documented on the Title IX. Once it was someone else, not from the school, not from the Shrewsbury,
Okay.
but someone from the board.
From the board.
Yes, not the board member.
Okay, so you're making a distinction between the administration and the... Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And they told me, they followed up 2 weeks after 2 of the incidents. So all my incidents are documented on Title IX.
But it took a while to get there.
And to our administration, I want you to know that for my part, I am simply reflecting what I am hearing. It is no judgment. I'm just trying to take in what it is that is being said so that we can have accurate conversations.
I was a parent that was never offered Title IX for the last 12 years. This is starting when she was in first grade and now in first grade.
If I may, Nathan.
Yeah.
Reaching out to the 2 mothers that spoke tonight, that's unacceptable, what's happened to you all. I was bullied as a kid, and it sucks, it really does. So I would also like to work with Jen, look into this, and see what we can do differently. So, my apologies.
Just one quick thing to the mothers. I do want to relate that how I showed up at my first school board meeting was because my son was being bullied and there was nothing being done about it. So I feel your pain and I understand it. That's one of the reasons why we've been working with, and finally working with Dr. Reppert to get some disciplinary data that we can release to the public so the board has more information. Obviously, we are not, as board members, in the schools every day like the administration, the principals, and the teachers are. So getting more of that level information to us is critical. We don't know that information, there's only so much information that goes from our 400 employees, staff and teachers, up through the assistant superintendent, the superintendent, to us. So please, we do want to work with you. We do want to correct these things, and we're doing everything in our, everything as quickly as we can to get the information we need to put policy in place to correct these things. So thank you all for coming here tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, that motion passes. Moving on to item 8, committee report, education. And I will turn it over to Mrs. Henkel.
All right, so we've got 8.01, the proposed district comprehensive plan 2024-2027. It's informational, and I will hand that over to Dr. Reppert for anybody who has any questions. Send them his way.
Thank you, Mrs. Henkel. Just for everyone to be aware, as well as the community, that we did post through 28 days. The survey that was sent out, there was a reminder survey that was sent out today. Any community feedback, please complete that form and submit that so we're able to utilize that feedback in order to make any revisions, potential revisions to the comprehensive plan so that we can have that to the board for final approval in March, to submit the PDE by the end of March.
Does anybody have any conversations or questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I know we've talked about this outside of the board meeting, but I just wanted to mention that, so it doesn't come as a surprise to anyone, that one of the enhancements that I think would be useful is to formalize retrospectives as part of the comprehensive plan, so that minimally every year we're taking a moment to ask questions. Is this working? Because the comprehensive plan, it's a plan, it's not binding. We can change things if they're not working. And I think we should actively be asking those questions at least annually. At least, if you think it can be done more frequently, that's great. But I don't want to spend all of our time doing retrospectives. So what are the most efficient and effective cadences, we can discuss that.
Okay. And Mr. Henkel, I'll work with Dr. Hughes, and we'll look on how to add those retrospectives into it so that we at least have annual update with data that indicate how the current plan is going, what's going well,
Yeah.
what are some of the challenges with it, what may be some of the changes we may want to recommend as a result.
Yeah, maybe get some feedback from teachers about whether annually would work well for them, or if they would like semi-annually. Get some perspectives on that. If everybody wants annually, then that's good enough for me.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, moving on to 8.02, we have the revised district health and safety plan for 2023-2024. I move to approve the revised district health and safety plan 2023-2024. May I have a second?
A second.
Okay. Open it up to discussion. I would like to highlight for my part that this is a much more practical health and safety plan. It takes out all the things that we don't do anyway, which is important, because if our district has it on a health and safety plan, we need to be doing it. And it gets rid of all of the contentious items that I believe that our district found themselves in. Does anybody else have any discussion?
Just appreciate your work with Dr. Reppert on that.
Pretty awesome. All righty. Do I have any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. That brings us to 8.03, quote for the EduPlanet 21. I'm going to send that over to Dr. Reppert.
Thank you, Mrs. Henkel. When we're looking at EduPlanet, we're currently utilizing this for our curriculum mapping, where our teachers are being trained in utilizing that. So as we are converting our old curriculum maps into the new format, it will be ADA compliant, which will help us in our transition into the new website that we'll be anxiously waiting to go live this summer. So I was looking at our Christina, because she's the brains behind that. So Christina, well done. So that's kind of where we are with the EduPlan. It is approving that so that we can have the licenses, so we can continue to have individuals trained.
I I move to approve a quote with EduPlan 21 for additional licenses for curriculum mapping online courses at a cost of $990 for the 2023-2024 school year. May I have a second?
Second.
Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. 8.04, costs associated with speakers approved through the vetting process. I move to approve the costs associated with the following speaker that has been approved through the vetting process, Victoria Coe, to virtually present her writing process for Fenway and Hattie to all Friendship Elementary School students at a cost of $1,000 to be paid using Title I funds. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I can't get into this. I think you have a better handle on the details. I thought the confluence of things, of different programs associated with this was really well put together.
Yeah, so this is one of the speakers that was approved that we have to pay a contract for, but you'll see it comes up in 8.60, 8.06. There are 3 of them that tie together, and it has to do with the one book that the elementary school chose. And so they have the author of this book present to students, and then they have a retired teacher from our district come and talk about the pets that she trains. And then we also have not a student from our district, but a 13-year-old actually, who has developed her own business and makes recycled dog toys. And so she's going to help the elementary school children to do that, and just ties in together. So it was a fantastic job, guys. Very well done. Yeah. Anybody else? Any other items of discussion with this one? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries.
I do just want to say something quick. Thank you so much for all of your work and letting the board know what the vetting process includes and what these speakers are and how it ties into something special that the school is doing. So
thank you,
that's very helpful. Thank you.
8.05, we have contract with Standing O Marching, and I want to hand this over to Dr. Reppert because it's a really cool way that our district handles these things.
Thank you, Mrs. Henkel. With the contract for Standing O Marching, we know that the marching band, as Carolyn indicated, they're down in Disney right now, or Orlando, and they're getting ready to prepare for next year already. So this gives them the opportunity to receive the music ahead of time, as opposed to waiting until next school year, and it's just a delayed billing contract, to the Standing O, that the band would be able to utilize and see that music ahead of time in preparation for next school year.
Alrighty. I move to approve a delayed billing contract with Standing O Marching for the purchase of the Fall 2024 Marching Band Music Package at a cost of $3,000. May I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. That brings us to 8.06, speakers approved through the vetting process. This is informational only. You can see on your screens all of the lovely speakers that we have coming to our district. Is there any discussion or questions you guys have? I can answer some. Dr. Reppert will make himself available as well. Anything for anybody? Alrighty, that takes us to 8.07, the academic achievement data. This is a public for your information. It's not an actionable item. The Board of Education to be informed that the academic achievement data presented at the January board meeting will be discussed at the March Education Committee meeting on March 19th, 2024. This is just our way of letting everybody know that we didn't forget about it. We are going to carry this over in March, and so it's a healthy discussion that we'll be able to have then. 8.08, revisions to the elementary and secondary school emergency relief funding plan. I'm going to hand that over to Dr. Reppert, but that was the presentation that we heard in 5 point, whatever it was, but you guys had covered that, and so that was this dovetail.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Henkel. So at this point, there was a presentation earlier just about the reallocation of the funds into the different buckets, so to speak. so that we can continue in the planning and preparation utilizing that Easter funding.
All right. I move to approve the revisions to the elementary and secondary school emergency fund, relief fund plan. May I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, that motion carries. That brings us to 8.09, the 2023-2024 Understanding by Design Leadership Training Supplemental Agreements. I'm going to hand that over to Dr. Ruppert.
Thank you, Mrs. Henkel. As we talked about Planet earlier, which is the program, the Understanding by Design is actually the format that we utilize for developing our curriculum maps, where we start with the end in mind, where we want our students to be when we start that design process, and then they call back mapping in developing those curriculum. Many years ago, when Dr. Price and I worked together at the high school, there was a training for that. So now that we're in the process of updating all of our maps, we do need more of our teachers to be trained. So this would include our facilitators, some of our teachers, 54 total throughout the district, in order to provide that knowledge for completing those curriculum maps.
Thank you so much.
And real quick, that 20 hours, Dr. Hughes, correct me if I'm wrong, that's online, that's at their pace. It's not a 20-hour sit-down session training. So this gives them the opportunity from now until the end of May for them to complete that training so that we can continue that process of curriculum mapping.
All righty, thank you, Dr. Ruppert.
You're welcome.
I move to approve 54 additional professional staff members for Understanding by Design leadership training for grades K through 12 across the district, not to exceed 20 hours per staff member at $34 an hour, for a total of $36,720 using ESSER funds. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? That motion carries. That brings us lastly to 8.10, other items of business. I have none. Anybody else? All right, that completes the education report.
All right, Mr. Wilson.
Okay. So 901, Treasurer's Report for January 2024. We started the month out in the concentration account with $23,572,802.04. We ended the month with $22,498,202.67. For the investment accounts, we started the month with $32,421,540.41. And at the end of the month, we had $29,805,860.01. Now, those of you with calculators might have noticed that our balances between the two are down about $3.6 million for the month. But this is expected. It's seasonal because of the tax seasons. This is why we budget. So that is there anything that you want to add to that, Mrs. Green?
No.
Okay. You're good. All right. So moving on to 9.02, reviewing the bills for payment. They are attached to board docs. I would like to motion to approve the bills for payment as presented.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. 9.03, exoneration and refunds. This one's even easier because there are none. 9.04, the tax collection report. This is for your information, is attached. Is there anything we want to touch on with this, Mrs. Green?
The only thing, we're right on par compared to last year on percentage of collections, doing well.
Okay, thank you. 9.05, budget status report. These are attached for your information. I mean, we seem to be right in line with where we should be with our budget for the year. Anything you want to add, Mrs. Green?
The only thing I'll piggyback on to something Mrs. Henkel said, we will be having a finance and budget committee meeting in March, so we'll talk more in depth about the budget at that time.
Okay. 9.06, budget transfers, even easier, none. 9.07, the cafeteria report, that is attached for your review. Okay, 9.08, York County School of Technology 2024-2025 budget. I'm going to flip ahead and go in between screens here. So the budget for York County, for the York County School of Technology is attached there. Our share based on the expected number of students, we're expected to have around 73 students this year. That's what they've projected for us. And our share of the operating budget would be about $1,045,000. So that's just so everybody knows what, what the value of this is to us. I would like to make a motion to approve the York County School of Technology 2024-2025 budget. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll. Sue, that's a roll call for the for the York Tech
We
budget.
usually just ask, we actually have to record the, but we just ask people to motion. So if we get no's, we'll see who it is.
I mean, if you want me to do, we can do roll call.
Yeah.
We don't normally, because if you all say yay, we list it as a roll call. So as long as everyone answers, we're good.
Okay, so I should ask for, all those in favor say aye. Okay. Is there any discussion on this? No? Okay. If you are in favor of approving the budget, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any nays? Hearing none? Good?
Thank you.
All right.
Make John Boyer happy.
All right. Moving on to 9.09. This is the LIU, Lincoln Intermediate Unit 2024-2025 budget. Just a quick thing, this is for the operating expenses for the LIU. Our portion of this is $5,402.46. Let's be exact. I'd like to make a motion to approve the LIU 2024-2025 budget. Second. All right. Any conversation on this one? Questions? No? Do I need to handle this the same way, the ayes? Okay, all right. All those in favor of approving the LIU budget, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay. 9.10, this is advertising for bids for the student Chromebooks. This ties into the ESSER funding presentation we had earlier this evening. This is to put out for bids. So I'd like to make a motion to consider advertising for bids for student Chromebooks per the Chromebook replacement plan using ESSER funds. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. 9.11. The budget update and state budget information. I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Green.
Okay, so I'll have a brief update this evening. So we're continuing to work through the process of prioritizing our budget items. Building and area detailed budgets were due today, so we always do that the day after Valentine's Day each year for our administrators. The ESSER plan was a big piece of that this evening, making sure we understand where we're going with the rest of the funds there. The other piece, later on the agenda this evening, the school safety grants that were announced at the end of December, and we just recently got information on. They are 24-month grants, so again, understanding where we're going with those, and we have recommendation in transportation, health, and safety this evening. So those are big pieces. And as I mentioned briefly a couple minutes ago, we will have the detailed budget presentation at the March 19th Finance and Budget Committee meeting, which is open to the public and live streamed. A couple things from Governor Shapiro's second budget address on February 6th. There were a lot of things, so I'm going to briefly summarize this because, as we know, this is what we have now, and not necessarily what we're going to end it with. So there is in the budget a 12% increase in the general fund budget with no tax increases, but using $3 billion in reserves to balance the budget. So that is a big number of reserves. One of the main priorities of his budget continues to be investing in children, students, and educators. So there are quite a few things related to public schools, which is good to see. Additional $200 million in proposed increase for the basic education funding formula, $871 million in new adequacy investment formulas driven into the base. This really surrounds the lawsuit for equity in education across the Commonwealth. So that's one of the steps forward in trying to meet adequacy across all districts. The other piece is $50 million for special education. While $50 million is a lot, there is a large way to go for special education, but we were happy to see the large increases in basic education because you can use that bucket for pretty much any needs that you have in the district. Many of the other items we'll continue to look into, but I wanted to point out a couple. He's advocating for a cyber charter school base rate. What's a little disappointing there is not necessarily the concept, but he's actually asking for $8,000 per cyber school child, where a couple years ago $9,000 and something didn't pass. So it does make me a little nervous how low that number is. The other piece is, and this one's a little, I want to look into it further, but this one's a little disappointing. And while we're putting a lot of more money into basic education and into subsidy, one of the things that they're advocating for is resetting the base again. So if you remember a couple years ago, a funding formula, new formula for education was put out with the idea that you would have a base of a certain year, and then new money would go to bringing all the districts into line on what they actually needed. But this resets the base again, so basically you end up with no losers. At some point in time, we're going to have to get to a point where those that have more money than they need to educate don't continue to get more state funding, and we spread it out to the districts that need it. So again, as we're looking into it, I think that's something we definitely want to keep an eye on, because resetting the base just kind of starts us back. And there's, when you have no losers, it's hard to really get those that are underfunded up to where they need to be. Even though they're losing students. So the formula was, and the base idea was, if you were losing students, you wouldn't continue to just keep getting more money. And the last piece is, and this is good news, continuing to house school safety and security grants in the budget for next year. So some of those programs that we were able to put in, and we can continue with the second round, hopefully we'll continue to see that, and we can keep those programs in. But it's a brief update, and we'll stay tuned to Harrisburg to see what's going on.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Green. Moving on to 9.12, it's a contract with E+ Technology. This is related to getting updated Wi-Fi into our middle and elementary schools. Excuse me. I'd like to make a motion to approve a contract with E+ Technology, Inc. for the purchase of 196 Extreme Network wireless access points at a cost of $57,484.84. This company was the winning bidder through the E-Rate PEPPM mini bid. Do I have a second?
Second.
One quick thing of note, this quote does not include the installation. That's going to be handled by our internal IT team. So that's one thing that we confirmed earlier today. Any other questions about this? No? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. 9.13, hydroponic stations. This is for the hydroponic stations for how many different buildings, Mrs. Green?
It's for all of the buildings.
All the buildings, okay. I was talking to them when we were over at Shrewsbury today about that. They already have a spot planned for it. So this is, I'm going to make a motion to approve a quote from Corbett Inc. for the purchase of 7 Fork Farm Flex Farm hydroponic stations at a cost of $31,749.20 on the CoStarz contract. These hydroponic stations are being purchased as part of the Farm to School grant and with EIT funding. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or commentary on this?
Yes, I'm totally good with this, as long as I get some lettuce.
Okay.
Yeah, stop by for a salad.
Yeah.
They're hoping by the end of the year, they'll have them in the schools. Sorry.
You'll have to come back to visit.
You can always come back and visit.
Zucchini grows pretty fast, I think. Maybe we can get.
And just so everybody on the board knows, this is entirely grant funded. This is budget neutral, so I would recommend going along with it.
If I can, if you,
Yes.
we can give a shout out to Mr. Carrington and Dr. Hughes.
They're gone.
Basically, just because they worked extensively on the Farm to School grant and then on getting a new program approved through our EITC program for the foundation, enabling us to be able to use that funding for hydroponics. So just wanted to give a shout out to both of them. That was a lot of work to get the approvals for both of those and be able to do this really great project without using taxpayer dollars.
Okay, great.
And I second that.
I was talking to Dr. Hughes and Dr. Reppert, and I believe it was Dr. Hughes that was discussing how she was talking to a student who was currently studying hydroponics here, and he had just learned about the grant that we had applied, and it was accepted, and he was really tickled that he was going to be able to see it in real time. I believe it was an elementary school student.
Elementary.
So that was really neat to hear.
And I'll third it and also say I'm probably to blame for all of that work because my interest went through the roof in visiting an innovation lab outside of Philly. And it wasn't even part of the innovation lab tour. It was off in the corner and I started asking questions. And then I was contacting Michigan and all kinds of
Came back and
places.
said, make this happen.
This is good for kids.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad you did.
Any other discussion? No? So we have a motion and a second. Any nays or abstentions from this? Hearing none, motion passes. All right, 9.14, this is the Volunteer Firefighter and Emergency Services Tax Credit Program. There's a lot of information that's attached here, including the eligibility lists. I'm going to make a motion to approve of a list of qualifying applications for the Volunteer Firefighter and Emergency Services Tax Credit Program totaling $35,000. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I mean, I do want to second just bring up what Mr. Doberman had mentioned earlier. A 15 participant increase in the first year is really great. So, I think this is a really valuable thing.
Shows effectiveness. Shows effectiveness.
Shows effectiveness, yes. Any other questions, discussion? No? There are none? Any nays or abstentions from?
I'm going to abstain from the vote.
Okay. All right, so we have one abstain. Any other nays or abstentions? No. Hearing none? Motion passes. Okay. Any other, I have no other items of business, so back to you, President.
All right. Next we have Ted, Committee Report on Personnel and Policy. Mrs. Hall, please take it away.
President Hinkle. Item 10.01, This is for action, the Board of Education to consider approval of the job description for a secondary librarian. I make a motion to approve the job description for secondary librarian. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions?
I did have one question. The job description under license and clearance it only lists the driver's license, not the standard sort of clearances we would have for staff. Is that? I didn't see it. Qualifications. Yeah, I don't see it. Librarian teaching certificate.
Yeah, it doesn't have
Well, that's
security
the,
clearance.
but that's a security clearance is kind of what I'm,
So board policy requires all of our employees to have
Okay.
their security clearances.
okay.
Yeah.
That's a clarification since we haven't done this before. All right.
No, you're fine.
yeah.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand
Thank
the
you.
question.
Is that something that standard is on that, or is it just because it's covered under board policy, it's not on any of our job descriptions?
It's not.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't missed.
Because that's a requirement for all school employees regardless of position.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Any other discussion? Hearing none, any nays or abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Item 10.02, this is also a board action. The Board of Education to consider approving a sabbatical for restoration of health for a teacher from Southern Elementary School. I would make a motion to approve a sabbatical for restoration of health for Monica Mitchick, Southern Elementary School, grade 5 teacher, beginning February 27th, 2024 through the end of the first semester of the school year 2024-2025. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I just wanted to add that on this particular one, I know that the administration has looking for a long-term substitute, and I believe that there is somebody immediately to come in to that position. So I know that that is covered, in case anybody was wondering. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. Any nays or abstentions? All right, that motion carries. Item 10.03 is board policies. It's public information. We did have a personnel and policy meeting prior to this board meeting where we went through the different policies that were up for our policy review. There were a couple revisions noted. Those will be made in the next version that we have in March, which will be our second reading. And at that time, we would be looking to approve those policies. So just for the purpose of transparency, I just wanted to list out for you that there were 3 different categories of reasons why these board policies were up. On the first set of categories, they were updated or new policies. Then there were another chunk of policies that had to do with merging policies together so that with the employees, we had 3 different distinctions. And so this is to put them all under one category just to reduce redundancies. So that was a second chunk. And then the third chunk of it was removal of administrative regulations that are not actually part of board policy, but they're put in there as an attachment for reference. So again, there's no action on this one tonight. It'll be at the next board meeting, but I did want to disclose what was in that last meeting. Item 10.04, retention of board videos. Again, this is a action. The Board of Education to consider approval of a 60-day extension of the action item instructing the superintendent to ensure the retention of all existing and all future videos of public board meetings until the board has a chance to vote on a policy concerning the retention of these videos. In the previous section, one of the policies under there was about being able to retain those videos. So it's in here just to be able to give that 60-day extension, but then we will vote on that next month. So I would like to make a motion to consider approval of a 60-day extension of the action item instructing the superintendent to ensure the retention of all existing and all future videos of public board meetings until the board has a chance to vote on a policy concerning the retention of these videos. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, this motion carries. And 10.05, other items of business. All right, and that concludes my report. Thank you.
Mrs. Hall. Mr. Hall.
It's a Buildings and Grounds report. Start with 11.01. There were documents attached for the board in regards to future projects and their status. You can see those in your board docs. At 11.02, we have also information for our water test report, which we passed. 11.03, we have committee report, Buildings and Grounds, for the Susquehannock High School project. Mr. Buffington.
Good evening. The Susquehannock High School project report is for your information. Project's going well. You saw the video earlier. We're down to 8 to 9 months till we complete this endeavor. Looking forward to that. Certainly any questions on that, I can take those. The timeline, no changes from last month on that, so that was included for your information. The financial report, I'd like to point out the contingency as of January 31st was approximately $400,000, slightly under that. Includes the change orders that are listed this evening that we'll talk about in just a minute. Any questions with the construction manager's report, the timeline, or the financial report? Okay, moving on to 11.04, change orders that I approved on site are listed there. I do want to point out we included a summary of cost to the district as well as cost that is picked up by the designer and the total cost there that you can see, approximately $50,000 for the district, $7,500 for the designer share. Any questions with change orders? Okay, moving on to 11.05.
Could, Randy,
sorry.
possibly if you could just highlight our costs for change orders and then the percentage that's being picked up by the architect, please?
I'm sorry?
Oh, or I could do it. It's fine. I have the information in front of me. So this month, our change orders total to $443,860. Many of them, as you can see here, had the 15% reimbursement from the architect. That value came to $46,406, bringing the reduction in our contingency funds to $397,454. And then there's some others that are in there that they picked up at 100%. We'll discuss those a little bit further on. Thank you.
Sure. So 11.05 change order, asked the board to consider this. So let me explain that a little bit. So over in the new kitchen, there's a island prep area that has some plumbing in it. As the food service staff looked at that and worked with that, it became apparent that it would be a better if that island actually went up to the wall or was taken to the wall. There would need to be some plumbing redone there. We've talked to the architect, not a code issue, not a design issue per se, but the architect agreed that they would reimburse the district 100% of that cost. But we want to bring that to the board for your consideration. So I would ask you to consider PCCOR, and COR is change order request. We will give it a number if we do approve it.
Yes, so I'd like to make a motion to approve change order PC-COR at the cost of $1,084, which will be reimbursed 100% by the architect for the Susquehannock High School project. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, 11.06. We have the need for golf carts for our graduation ceremony, and this is not something that is exclusive because of the construction project. This is something that has been going on, I'm not sure how many years, but many years before.
Many. I have 19, and it's, I think, all of those.
So I would like to make a motion to approve the rental agreement with Golf Cart Services Incorporated for the rental of six passenger shuttles for the 2024 graduation at a cost of $1,100. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any nays or abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to 11.07. I'd like to make a motion to approve the quote with Heritage Lawn and Landscape Care for $16,800 to add topsoil, aerate, and seed the old baseball field to be completed in the spring of 2024. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion on this?
Which was the old baseball field?
So old baseball field would be Field 3.
Field 3 is the one next to the
elementary?
concession stand, the house
It's
next.
closest
or
to
the
here,
tennis.
closest to the middle,
Tennis, okay.
is the old baseball field. We did have an opportunity where many of us on the board went and looked at the needs on the field, and although this may not be the sum total of what the field will need long-term, our plan is to rest the field, that's correct?
We will.
So we're going to be resting the field, and this work will allow the grass to grow back in over top of fixing depressions and issues that are in the field. It's not going to address the fact that the field has a major elevation change from left to right of about 13 feet. But it will address smoothing the field out so that it is at least a consistent taper from one side to the other. Any questions?
I just wanted to mention that I thought the field visit was a really great collaboration between board members, coaches, admin. It actually had impacts on tonight's agenda where we were talking about solutions and trying to plan this out the best that we could. And I was really, really happy with the collaboration. And there's still some additional ideas that we're still going to explore, all based on that field visit. So just that on the ground, discussion that we had, standing out there in the fields where we could see the actual layout, I think really resulted in a very, very productive collaboration.
And that incorporated both fields, which we'll get to that in a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Any other questions, comments? Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. Moving on to 11.08, quote number 2 with Heritage Lawn and Landscape Care. This motion is to approve a quote with Heritage Lawn and Landscape Care for $781 to add topsoil in outfield depressions and seed spring of 2024, and $9,614 to aerate, top dress, and seed fall of 2024 for the new baseball field, which is Field 8. Do I have a second?
Second.
So any questions or discussions? So as Nathan had alluded to while we were there, this is just a piece of, this is dealing with the grass and on the physical field. We are going to use this field as our primary field in the season, which kicks off soon. So that's why some of the work is delayed. This is not all-encompassing of what this field needs. This is only dealing with the grass. Okay. Okay, any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. Moving on to 11.09, supplies for field improvements. This also is dealing with field number 8. This motion is to approve the purchase of supplies not to exceed $6,000 to make improvements to the baseball and softball fields in the areas of selected pitching mounds and select flooring for batting cages. Work on these projects will be performed internally and with the help of volunteers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Was this part of what resulted from the visit that you had? This is an additional thing that came up? Okay.
Correct.
I would add that we're also doing some work at Field 10, the softball field, which is in front of Southern Elementary.
Yes.
I do have one question. How will the volunteer information be shared?
To advertise for volunteers?
Yes.
Decided yet? But I think that this is a good opportunity to put it out there that we want volunteers, and I was going to bring that up here momentarily, that we do need volunteers to come out and help us with that. I know that we're going to be doing some things in-house, and we'll have staff here, school staff here through that process.
Yeah, we'll try to get a sign up, and much like I think with the moving process that we did with the high school. I will put it out there that, as Mr. Hall had mentioned, baseball season, softball season, spring sports are right around the corner, so this work is going to happen very quickly. Some of the material would be ordered tomorrow morning.
And the time frame for volunteers, do we have an approximate time frame for when they'll be needed?
Over the next few weeks.
Over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
So just get your information if we want to come in and
Yeah,
volunteer.
we'll start to prioritize and get that info out.
So one of the things we're very fortunate, we have one of our maintenance mechanics is an expert in the area of field, so he will be leading this charge. And as we work with volunteers, we're going to want to make sure that he's there to supervise the project and make sure it's the way. So as we're putting it together, we'll get that out there, and hopefully we can get some folks to help him and get that done less expensively than having outside folks do it.
Well, and there's also a sense of urgency. We don't have a lot of time, so keeping it in-house allows us to have more flexibility in that time frame and work with that. But, I'll be there, so if anyone else wants to come and volunteer.
We have a son, too.
He'll be volunteered or voluntold.
Voluntold.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
I just want to say it was awesome to walk the field with all you and administration. I started as I just want to see the fields. I hadn't seen them in 20 years, and Dr. Bryson made it into a golf cart full of people walking, and a truckload of people, and it was cool to see the collaboration and the discussion we had.
Yeah, thank you for putting that together, Dr. Bryson.
Welcome.
Okay, any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. Then 11.01, or 11.10, getting a little blurry over here. Use of facilities, this is a, for our information, but I would like to note, in our discussions in the past, there are no uses of any of the grass fields at the high school in this particular list. Some of the turf field, but not at the high school. So, moving on. Okay, 11.11. Are there any other items of business for buildings and grounds? Hearing none. Mr. President?
All right, next we have transportation, health, and safety. You may notice that the name here changed to include safety. It was getting to be a bit much to include some of actually, sorry, it's health. Nope, it's safety that's added, right? What was this one? It was transportation. It's transportation and safety. We added health down here, that's right. It was getting to be a bit much to have some of that information in education report, so we moved that. I'll turn it over to Mr. Hash.
Just a quick transportation report from First Student. They're trying to they hired 3 new drivers, licensed them. One of the open management positions is now open. One of the gentlemen, he moved his family to Portugal, and he will be pursuing a different passion. For now, 2 of the other people in the office will be taking over his duties. Red light camera violations, we had 6 of them in the month of January, and they were all head-on vehicle passing the bus. Driver observed all of them and reported them. That is all I have for that. 1202 is second quarter discipline data, and I will hand that over to Dr. Ruppert.
Thank you, Mr. Hash. As we take a look, board directors, there's a green sheet on your desk. Ms. Katz's going to pull up the discipline for the public. We're going to start with the 23-24 second marking period SYCSD District Quarterly Discipline Report. Within these columns, you will see the infraction codes as well as the totals of those infractions for marking period 1, marking period 2, as well as what the total is to date. So as we go through and we look specifically at the discipline data, we do see that, from the first to the second, you do see some similarities in the data based on the frequency. We do have a, indication that, as things are being reported, as items are being shared with the administration, they are being addressed, as we had some comments earlier. When we look down at the action codes at the bottom, you're going to see the totals for the first and the second marking period. And in a discussion that I had with Mr. Hash and Mr. Wilson, just something I want to point out to the public is you generally see, someone may say, well, why do you see less numbers in your first marking period and they increase in the second marking period? Well, one of the components with that is when students start off the school year, there's that honeymoon period where they're getting acclimated to school, they're learning the routines, et cetera. And yes, you still have students that have conduct violations that occur during that first marking period, but they're generally fewer. But what we'll see as we look at the trends throughout the entire school year in comparison to the last school year, as you go to the second marking period, students start to feel maybe a little more comfortable, maybe testing some other areas, based on what they feel they may be able to get away with, but then not get away with, and they're being held accountable for. So we do see an increase when you're looking at the action codes also. The one that really sticks out as you're looking at detentions, and one thing I do want to note with that, we have 2 styles of detention. We have an after-school detention, which we did under the consent approve the detention monitor for the high school. But we also have Saturday school detention that happens every other Saturday, that is hosted by our assistant principals from the secondary level with staff members, where the students come in. There is time that they're doing work, but there's also some service work that they're doing within our buildings. So it's a great opportunity for our students, as opposed to just serving that consequence, but learning something from as to why they're in that situation. So that's where we are for the first and second marking period for this school year. Are there any questions from the board before we take a flip over and look at comparative to last school year?
A question.
Yes.
So when I was looking through this, it kind of piqued my interest because I was talking about it in some of my dual enrollment classes that I was taking. The infractions under like controlled substance use, alcohol use, tobacco, vaping use, there's a total of 19, but then as in terms of like actions being taken, only 2 of those infractions resulted in like drug and alcohol counseling. And I was just curious, like what is like the typical procedure that is taken like for drug and like alcohol use in school?
Carolyn, that's an excellent question, and thanks for bringing that up. When we have students that are in violation of drugs, alcohol, either in possession, under the influence of, or distribution, we do have a process that our board has dealt with in recent months, where students may receive a consequence that goes beyond a suspension. So there are some additional components that we do require students to participate in and complete during a 45-day or a 60-day time period, which would include requirement that they go through our student assistance team. And if it's for a drug or alcohol related, it's specific to that component. And then there's also other components that are involved, service hours, community service hours that need to complete. And the other thing I wanted to share to the public is in these situations, Southern Regional Police is also involved. And for first-time offenses, for students that are referred to Southern Regional Police, they have a diversionary program called the Youth Aid Panel, where the individual can work with members from the community on a project specific to their conduct. And then once they complete that, then their potential charges that they may have received would be expunged. But students only have one opportunity to be part of that diversionary program when it comes to drug or alcohol. And the one thing for the school board, when we do our Safe Schools report that you'll receive in August, there will be a component there where anytime our LEA, local law enforcement, or Southern Regional or state police are contacted for incidents, our records have to match their records. So there is that checks and balances as we look at how many times, Officer Hanson or some from Southern Regional Police had to respond to a situation. So that really covers, some of the, with the drug and alcohol counseling. There may be other sanctions, student assistance program.
Is the diversionary program considered drug and alcohol counseling, or?
No, that's separate, because that comes from the criminal side, right, when Southern Regional Police are involved with that component there.
So if I can just, I think your question is why, unless drug and alcohol counseling is considered a consequence, I guess the question would be, why is it not occurring more frequently?
Well,
yeah.
There's a program that was implemented several years ago. So just historically, real quick, those types of offenses, this is going back a number of years, were brought before the board for expulsion. So students with alcohol or drugs and things were expelled from school for 1 calendar year. The board changed. The board at that time said we don't want simply punitive measures. We want to empower students and parents to select from an opportunity And if they agree to participate in drug and alcohol counseling and other components, there'll be a lesser period of time out of school for the school violation. So right now, we have a tiered system for first offenses, for possession or use. There's a separate consequences for distribution. And depending on what the student and family elect, they will voluntarily commit to some of these things that are listed. And in exchange for that, the board and district agree to keep a lesser period of time out of school. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to, because it's all voluntary. But then they're probably going to be expelled. And so that's why you probably see some of those divergence, is that depending on what they did and if it's a first offense or a second offense, the family and the student get to select an option if they wish. And that's why some kids are doing drug and alcohol counseling, others aren't.
So the other piece, they're pretty close in actuality. So student assistance referral, where you have a total of 8, that's going to result in an assessment which goes to counseling, which could be drug and alcohol or could be mental health, depending on the child. So
Thank you.
is another.
Would any of them fall under the remedial other as well?
Potentially. But I'm not going to try to define remedial other.
The only reason I bring it up is just because, we're looking at like policy changes and like editing certain policies, and it just, from what I understand, a lot of students who come to school and, choose to use drugs and alcohol while they're in school don't really do it because they think it's cool, or, it's more so, a lot of these kids are just addicted to the substances, and they can't stop because even, no matter how hard they try, like, they can't. So I was just curious if, like, counseling is that like our first option, or,
Usually it's a part of.
Okay.
It's a part of a yeah, you would have the counseling piece, but you'd also have some level of consequence that goes along with that, so.
It would be nice to tease out how many of these are, how many students who are committing these offenses are electing counseling, because if it's low, and if the counseling is helpful, then we may want to figure out if there are ways we can incentivize that better. Thank you.
If we flip over to the flip side, on the back side where you have the 2023 first semester, 2022-23 and the 23-24, for the board, just as a reminder, last year was the first year we had this data, and when we put it together, it was actually the first semester, because I believe, Joe, I think we started talking in November maybe, so we waited till the end of the first semester. So just to show some comparative data between first semester last year, first semester this year. 4 areas when I take a look at the infraction codes where there has been an increase, the racial and ethnic intimidation from 1 report last year to 11 so far this year. Minor altercations from 6 to 11. Threatening school official or students, that would involve our threat assessments, as we talked about earlier in the with the policies, that we went from 4 to 17, and then the possession use of controlled substance between went from 3 to 6. So there has been an increase in those areas. So I do want to kind of point those out as a way for us to continue to draw comparisons from year to year as we're looking at data. And what I plan to bring to the board after we have third marking period is you'll see a similar chart as you see here for first, second, first semester, but then we'll have a comparison of third marking period last year to third marking period this year. So we're going to start to see how our totals are kind of going through the year. And please keep in mind that we do have new students that move in, students that move out. So these are district totals as we're looking at the total discipline at this point.
Dr. Ruppert, one thing I did want to point out on here, the 53, vaping has actually gone down over a previous year, which is a positive, I believe.
Well, and something I want to share about that, Mr. Wilson, is we see, vaping where we had, 10 to this point. Now, that's 10 individuals that through a detection and the administration notified are able to identify the student, and then during their discussion with the student are obtaining that vape back. So I do know that, our administration at the high school where they have the detectors, they're doing a diligent job, regarding that. And I know they're trying to stay on top of that as much as possible. But as we were talking about earlier, the administration is also, inundated. Not only do they have to do their instructional piece of observations and getting in the classrooms, taking Dr. Price and I around, they're also dealing with a lot of the other disciplinary things that's taking up a lot of their time, including threat assessments. Sharing with Dr. Bryson, I've sat in 6 threat assessments this week. Please keep in mind, we didn't have school on Tuesday. All right? And that's about an hour to an hour and a half time of the administration. So when these opportunities where these detections are coming up, our administration is trying to get there as quick as possible, to make sure those are being addressed. So I do appreciate you noting that.
But I think what you're saying is the number's lower, not necessarily vaping is going down, potentially.
Potentially. Are there any other questions regarding the data?
So in regards to the significant increase in racial and ethnic intimidation, maybe a look at our policies on that is a good start, but I would say that those numbers really need our attention to bring that down. I understand that it's about half of the either harassment or intimidation totals. But nevertheless, I think that is a significant increase that really needs our attention.
I think it's important to consider that maybe that number increasing is not necessarily a bad thing, because students are recognizing that they can now go and report these instances.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So maybe it's not that it's happening more frequently, maybe it's just that, like I said, that the students just know what they can do now about it.
Certainly.
Right. And I do want to jump, tie into that. Like, yes, having this report and knowing that things are being reported makes people who are in bad situations more comfortable to speak up.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, these numbers could go up, and it could be a good thing, because if the numbers go up because people are reporting it, we do want that, and then we want those numbers to come down because the actual incidents are decreasing. I would say that the 11 versus the 1, last year's total was 12, so that 1 was low for that particular semester compared to the year. The general trend is that the numbers for race, really intimidation generally, racial and otherwise, have been climbing since about the 2021 year through now. Kind of every year they've been. I mean, they don't exactly go up every year, but they've been growing. And if they go down a little, it's only a little bit. The general trend has been increasing for the past 3 years, and now even the first marking period of this year. So I would hope that that's because of increased reporting, and that effect may still happen. And I would encourage everyone, please do report incidents, because that's the only way we can know how are we doing, is if they're reported. So if these numbers can go up, and if it represents increased reporting, that's okay.
And Mr. Henkel, one thing I do want to add, going back to Dr. Bryson's statement earlier, we do have some venues, where students can report, the Safe to Say, Mrs. Green and I, we do get notifications if there's anything racial or any other concerns. So students can utilize that. School counselors, teachers, administrators, it could be sending an email, that, hey, there's a concern going on. Because as Dr. Bryson said, if we know about it, we can do something about it. And my heart goes out to the families that spoke this evening, but it's not just, those, I know that's our concern because that's what's current, but there's a lot of other areas of discrimination and harassment that are occurring. And I think the more our students know they have a voice and to let the administration, let people know, I know our administrators will do something about it. And going back to where Carolyn was speaking earlier, I think more students are feeling like their voice can be heard, and they are doing something about it, and they are sharing it. So that's why we're seeing more of these things being addressed.
Obviously, we can't have data to compare to the data, because the data we have is the data we have.
Right.
So we can't use another data set to know, is this an increase in reports or is this an increase in incidents? Have you discussed, especially for that period, 2020 onward, have you discussed with maybe some of the building administrators their perception of whether this represents an increase in the number of reports and documented incidents, or whether it actually it represents an increase in the incidents? Is that a conversation that has been had or that could be had?
I would have to pull that. Go ahead, Bob.
I'm jumping in.
Yeah.
Just because I was in his position at that time till now, so there's a historical perspective that I can
Okay.
bring.
Yeah.
Jeff, when did Title IX documentation change dramatically into what we're reporting now? You have it?
I think it was right around that time. So just to be clear, hate to be persnickety, when people say Title IX, because I had this discussion with Dr. Repper, people are using it incorrectly. Title IX is a sex discrimination statute. So when you're talking about Title IX properly, we're talking about complaints of sexual discrimination and sexual harassment. It was under the Trump administration, towards the end of the administration, that there was new regulations that came out that required a far more robust formal complaint procedure, which required a lot more paperwork and reporting and tracking, and a much more formalized process before discipline could be opposed against someone who's accused. So when these folks tonight were talking about Title IX, that's technically not correct. It's covered by Policy 103. It's actually a Title VI issue. But as an aside, the important thing is the parents know that there is a complaint process to report this, and then it goes to the appropriate people. We have a Title IX process that's different than that. But to Bob's point, yes, the law was significantly changed, and as a result of that, we had to track things differently and handle those complaints differently than what we had done in the past.
So my intent is not to call out Mrs. Bohr. I think we all have the same interest in mind, and that is to create a safe environment for every child. And it's an incredibly difficult challenge on any given day. That being said, some of where this reporting, or I didn't get a report, well, if it was beyond a certain time, you would not have gotten that same, what we're referencing as Title IX, but is actually racial, ethnic intimidation, wouldn't have been available beyond a certain time point. And that does impact what the numbers look like.
Yeah, I did.
As our teams had to learn what are the new definitions based upon one administration to the next administration. So what I would say is the 11 is the most accurate number you're going to find. And I would say last year should have been fairly close to that. Pre that, we were still training in the area of how to do this new level of investigation, the new level of a complaint form, what are supportive measures, what are our obligations in that area. So there's a lot to keep in mind with that number that pops up, or there's an increase, and you guys have hit on it, even just by looking at it and saying, well, it could be this, it could be that. So yes, I think we can go back and take a look at a deeper dive with our team of administrators. And for the number that we're referencing, we can look, at the exact cases with the exact forms and documents.
Yeah, and that actually, that makes a certain amount of sense of, the numbers for bullying in 17, 18, 18, 19 were 11 and 20, and they've gone down to 1 and 2 each year. And that, I was wondering if that was a categorization change rather than an actual, like what we were calling bullying, now we're calling this form of harassment or that form of harassment, maybe definitional. But the fact that the harassment categories existed back then means the categories existed, but I guess we're still, the definitions are still maybe changing even though the
And this is something I talked with Dr. Bryson about, I talked to Dr. Reppert about, like, how Pennsylvania defines these categories has changed, which means, at a certain point going backwards through time, you end up losing the thread because this used to be called this, but now it's called these 3 other things.
The apples to
So,
apples is different.
right.
And one last point, President Henkel to bring up. To my knowledge, this is year 4 since Title IX, since we initiated with Title IX, discriminating harassment, which is policy 103. And the only reason I know that is I'm in my 2nd year here, okay? And I was trained in 2 years prior to taking this position. So from a standpoint where Dr. Bryson was talking, there has been that time, not only the training, but as Mr. Wilson had talked about, the understanding of what that language is, how it's broken down. But I also think our administrators have a better understanding, as well as our, our administrators as they're sharing that complaint process with the parents when there are concerns that are related to anything with discrimination, harassment, Title IX sexual harassment.
I have a question, actually. As I'm trying to digest and process this data, I understand that, like, for instance, 17 fighting, there's 4 instances of that in the first semester. But as we're unraveling and unpacking this, as a board member, it would be, and I don't want to overburden the administration in my request for more data, but is that, am I reading it correctly that oftentimes it's reported because it's incidences, it could be 2 students fighting, and so that's 1 fight, but 2 people together, and then a second instance of fighting that's another 2 people fighting, and so that's 2 fighting incidents, or is that 2 infractions each? Do you understand my question?
When you're looking at fighting, if, let's just say, Dr. Bryson and Dr. Reppert got into a physical altercation, it would both be listed in the infraction code, fighting and fighting, so it could be 1 incident, but you're looking at 2.
Right.
Yes.
And then to follow up on that, because that's how we're digesting this information with public comment. Specifically, one of the moms was talking about repeat offenders. Now, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to ask this, and maybe this would be private information that the board could have, but I digest it differently when I see a number, but I know that the instances are the same kid, the same student. Obviously, some of these infractions, it's a one-time thing, you're out if you do these things, but it would help me to understand, are our policies working, not just from a prohibitive standpoint, helping to alert the student population that appropriate behavior is expected of them, but also if you see the same student participating in infraction after infraction, and he or she is the reason that the number total is what it is, that's completely different than just having a total number. And I don't know if it's inappropriate for me to ask for that information, but is that something that could be given to the board at the very least?
I'll start with just to speak to those students that might have some recidivism, that the repeat offenses. At the building level, they know who those students that are having repeat offenses, and it may not be specific with any of these, but that are the quote-unquote frequent flyers. And those situations, there's a lot that's put into place, for those students, whether it is, supportive measures, whether we're looking at specific consequences. It could be, taking a look at, okay, do we need to look at a counseling, student assistance referral? Or is it a student, special ed or not special ed, and are demonstrating certain behaviors? Does the team need to get together to determine whether or not an evaluation is necessary to better support because they're acting out as a result of maybe an undiagnosed disability? So that's a way, like at the building level, they're able to determine those students that have those multiple offenses. Now, as for the board, are you requesting individual students?
I don't need to know names for my purposes, and I'm glad that the buildings know. I mean, I take comfort in that, but it is different to me to see, 22 threatening school official or students, 17 instances. Is that 17 instances with 17 different children, or is it 14 instances with one child, don't need to know the name, and then 3 others? That is different.
Recidivism rates would be a useful.
Yeah.
So what I would say on these particular categories, very few of these are repeats. Because the categories are such that if you're getting to the point of repeating, you're getting to the point that,
And that tracks.
you're probably looking at a placement. And that's why we're looking at the big behavior items. Are there exceptions to that? Threatening a student or an official, potentially you may have one that's in there more than, or in there twice, because an example may be, I have a student that has special needs, and this is the behavior that you see now and then. We still do a threat assessment, but in that, we're also doing special ed assessing, and it's coming back, this is his typical behavior, we're getting better, we're seeing less, but we're not there yet. So that individual might categorize in that area. But the point, it's your second fight, we're gonna have a really, really long discussion about, is this working out? Are there exceptions? Yes. But not very many. Same thing, the drug and alcohol, that's years back, as Jeff shared, we've moved to, we'll do counseling, we'll do multiple week suspension, but like second offense at that point, we've got a bigger issue. We're not.
I guess one thing that could happen, as you're saying, a lot of these they're approaching having a placement, so there's probably not going to be a lot of additional opportunities for recidivism. I suppose we could extend it down into the student code of conduct violations, where it turns out that the one who maybe they're escalating, and they did this, and then they got detention, and detention wasn't severe enough to deter them from taking it to the next level, with the next thing they did. All right. Let's see.
Oh.
Back to you.
Yeah. Move to 12.3. Any other items of business?
And if we could, I think we had I don't know how it happened, but I think we had an issue with board docs. Somehow, The PCCD grant applications flew down into athletics and extracurricular out of transportation, health, and safety.
Wondered about that. I was like, what am I doing?
It wasn't like that last Friday. So if you could also handle that one, which should be under transportation, health, and safety, please. Or throw it my direction, either way.
Liz, you want to take this?
No, go ahead. That's all you.
Motion to approve of authorizing the administration to file the following 2023-2024 PCCD grant applications. All of these are 24-month grants. School District Meritorious Grant at $40,000, School Mental Health Grant at $136,922, and Competitive School Safety Grant Select Projects.
Second?
You say it. Do I have a second? Thank you. Any discussion? Any conversation? No? Good. All right. Any nays or abstentions? Motion passes. And I think now we're concluding transportation, health, and safety. Now, Liz.
Item number 1302, the athletic report. The Warriors continue to have another strong winter season. All the teams are finishing up the regular season, and some are preparing for postseason. Here are some of the current highlights. Girls basketball. Congratulations to the Warrior girls basketball team for qualifying for the PIAA District 3 Championships to begin on 2/20. Times and locations have not been determined at this point. And as Caroline had said earlier, the Warrior girls basketball team was selected as recipients of the Gretchen Wolf Sportsmanship Award. This award is selected by the YAAA basketball officials and presented to one boys and one girls team each year throughout the YAIAA. In May, the members of the Gretchen Wolf Sports Scholarship Foundation will recognize senior members from the team and will award scholarships. Last year, the scholarships awarded between the boys and girls totaled over $100,000. We could not be more proud of the players and coaches for earning this tremendous honor. On to wrestling. Warrior Wrestling finished third in the YAIAA Division II. The Warriors will wrestle next in the PIAA District 3 Section 4 tournament on February 17th at Southwestern High School. And swimming. Congratulations to the Warrior boys and girls swim team on another strong season. The boys team finished YAIAA Division II runner-up, while the girls finished third. On February 9th and 10th, the Warriors competed at the YAIAA Swimming Championships at Central York High School. Below are the medal winners from each event. For the boys team, the 200 medley relay, they got fourth place. That was Tyler Burgess, Tyler Wright, Jack Hammond, and Jackson Hollinger. The 200 medley relay, the other one, got eighth place. That was Tommy Manassi, Caleb Keener, Isaiah Voss, and Owen Chilcote-Goebel. The 200 freestyle relay, they placed seventh. That was Isaiah Voss, Ben Hollop, Tommy Manassi, and Jackson Elliott. The 400 freestyle relay got sixth place. Tyler Burgess, Ben Hollum, Jackson Hollinger, and Tyler Wright. Jackson Hollinger also placed fifth in the 200 freestyle and sixth place in the 500 freestyle. Tyler Burgess placed seventh place in the 200 freestyle and seventh place in the 500 freestyle. Tyler Wright placed second place in the 100 butterfly and third place in the 100 breaststroke. And Jack Hammond placed fifth in the 100th breaststroke. All right, on to the girls' team. The 200 medley relay placed seventh with Kate and Lauren I knew I would mess it up. Kalamanovich. I've been saying it the whole meeting. To myself. Sarah Weisseldorfer and Caitlin Ketterman. The 400 freestyle relay, they got second place was Caitlin Ketterman, Sarah Weisseldorfer, and Lauren and Kate. The 400 freestyle relay got eighth place. That was Haley Wilmer, Audrey Umstead, Madeline Zahor, and Gracie Burden. Caitlin Ketterman placed fifth place in the 50 freestyle. Kate placed, she got the championship in the 100 butterfly, so she placed first place, and fifth place in the 500 freestyle. Lauren placed sixth place in the 100 backstroke. The Warriors will swim next at the PIAA District 3 Championships at Cumberland Valley High School on March 1st and 2nd. And I have no new business, so that concludes my report.
Which is wonderful. A lot of success there.
Absolutely.
Great job.
Thank you, Ms. Stubborn.
Also won York Daily Records Athlete of the Week.
Nice, thank you.
Sounds like you've got some inside information.
And you said her last name so nicely.
Item 14, other items of business. I don't have any. Does anyone else have other items of business? All right, moving on to Legislative Council. Mrs. Hall.
All right, so a lot of my thunder was stolen tonight from Dr. Reppert, thank you, and our student rep, Caroline Dunn. But I'm just going to go ahead and repeat it and put another plug in, so got a couple of things. And Mrs. Green outlining so well for us last week's announcement from Governor Shapiro delivering his address for the budget. So I will start with that. And so I don't know if a lot of you have listened to it, but Governor Shapiro did give his address yesterday or last week for the state budget. And just to outline a few things, that he's going to be investing or asking to invest $1.8 billion in public education. So the budget also includes $50 million in increases for special education and $300 million in sustainable funding for environmental repair projects in school buildings, which is nice for us if we can qualify for some of that. Additionally, the proposal would establish a statewide cyber tuition rate of $8,000 per student per year to better align with the actual cost of providing online education. Mrs. Green touched on that earlier today as well. This alone will save Pennsylvania public schools an estimated $262 million annually, as that's a lot of our budget going to cyber school reimbursement. Also, the budget provides $3 billion to cover the state's share of school employment retirement pension costs, and this budget seems to cover all the bases in relation to revamping basic education funding, special education costs, cyber education costs, and much-needed building repairs. But there's more to come as the Appropriations Committee of the Senate and the House Representatives conduct separate hearings to discuss the proposal. So the Senate will hold their hearing with the Pennsylvania Department of Education on February 28th. I'm sure it's going to be televised if anybody wants to watch. And the House on March 5th. So there's a lot to chew on yet. Not sure what's going to get through, what's not going to get through, but that concludes my part of the report. Mrs. Henkel, do you have anything to add?
I do. So House Bill 1507 passed the House and Senate and was signed into law by Governor Shapiro on December 14th of last year. The prior law dictated schools provide 180 days of instruction per school year. However, a school board was permitted to request a school week be comprised of 27.5 hours as the equivalent for 5 school days. Additionally, the Secretary of Education could always, upon request, have the 990 secondary or 900 elementary hours of instruction as the equivalent of 180 school days. House Bill 1507 removed the approval process and automatically set the standard at 180 days. You've got the hours. The bill's sponsor, Republican Representative Jesse Topper, said the following: though it may seem like a minor adjustment in accounting for instructional time, this change will give teachers and administrators the opportunity to better meet the needs of the students. He went on to say, as I have toured school districts across the Commonwealth, I've heard the request for increased individualized education, student support, and more focused workforce development. This bill, now signed into law, will help in all of those areas. And that completes my report.
All right. Moving on to York School of Technology. Ms. Dauberman?
I only have one short thing to update, and it's exciting. One of our students was selected as Student of the Month, senior Audrey Arter. She is going there for dental assisting, but it's very exciting that one of our students was Student of the Month. That's all I got.
That's great.
All right. There are some reports related to LIU 12 attached for your information. Were there any comments or discussion on that? All right. Moving on. York Adams Tax Bureau. Ms. Green, do you have any?
No report.
Nope, no report. All right. Southern York County School District Foundation. Mrs. Hall?
All right, certainly. So I'm going to have to put another plug in for Battle of the Buildings. So I hope before we get started with that, that all of the seniors have put in their applications for Dollars for Scholars that closed not too long ago. So I hope that I hear almost everyone's name when we're out there in May watching the scholarships happen. It's going to be great when they're awarded. Anyway, moving through foundation news, we haven't had our updated meeting yet. That happens next month, and we'll have more. But in the meantime, the 2024 Battle of the Buildings fundraiser is just 2 short weeks away, as Dr. Reppert and our student council, Ms. Dunn, said as well. On Wednesday, February 28th is when it will be in the Susquehannock High School gym. Tickets will be available for $5 at the door, and new this year, doors will open at 5:30, and fun basketball games will be offered for $1. Tickets for pregame basketball activities also will be sold at the door. Warrior Council, as Caroline also said, will be offering their basket raffle fundraiser, which it sounds like there's going to be a whole lot of good stuff up for raffle. Those are for the Coats of Friendship, and they're certainly accepting winter outerwear donations, as she indicated. So don't forget to bring your gently used coats, gloves, and hats to donate. And go for a good cause, that's for sure. And if you're a student that is a senior at the event, I will certainly be there. So come find me and say, "Show me the money," and I'll have a little something extra for you while supplies last. And the Southern York County School District Foundation and the Susquehannock Alumni Association appreciate the support of the community to help raise money for the student scholarships and alumni programs. A tremendous thank you for all who plan to attend. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Other items of business? Hearing none. On to the Secretary's report. Student activities report for January 2024 is attached for your information. Does anyone have any comments on those? Resignations and retirements. We only have 4. That's smaller than I've seen sometimes, so that's probably a good thing. Although, you know, retirement can be nice for people, but only got 1 of those, 3 resignations. I believe those have been tapering off somewhat. Attached for your information. Other items of business, anyone? 1701, for your information, there's the home education outside cyber charter and Southern York Digital Academy education report. And then on to announcements by the board president and superintendent. An education committee meeting immediately followed by a finance and budget committee meeting will be held on Tuesday, March 19th, 2024 in the Southern Middle School cafeteria beginning at 6:30 p.m. And the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Thursday, March 21st, 2024 in the Southern Middle School cafeteria beginning at 7 p.m. Dr. Bryson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to go different style here tonight only because my friends Caroline and Dr. Reppert and Mrs. Dauber all gave a ton of recognition throughout. So I'll try to stick, I think, to staff. Kudos to middle school teacher Tricia Hulme for being selected as Brown's Orchard and Farm Markets Teacher of the Month for January. To make this even more special, Mrs. Hulme received the ultimate recognition in being nominated by 2 of her students from her classroom. So they came in and honored her with a basket of apples and got some photo ops with the class. So awesome. to capitalize on the talents and interests of our staff members and to enhance a pool of teacher applicants. The district is partnering with the LIU and various colleges and universities to explore creative methods, establishing pathways towards pursuing additional educational opportunities for our paraprofessionals to earn a teaching certificate. So general gist of it is, if you're a paraprofessional and you work with us, there's a good chance we can get you connected with a university to take college credits, do a cohort, and eventually get your teaching certificate. Because as we all know, there's an extreme shortage. Just to give you a quick example of that, we are participating, multiple administrators are participating in Shippensburg virtual mock interviews. So all their teaching candidates at Shippensburg will do mock interviews with administrators from around the state to give them some experience, great experience. It's also a way for us to recruit for many universities that we can do that. We also do it with York College. Anyway, general gist of it, total math certified candidates coming from Shippensburg in the spring, 1. Total chemistry, 1. Total biology, 1. I'm telling you, this is extremely scary for the future of this profession and for the benefit of our kids that are with us. That number is unbelievable. Total number of candidates, I believe, was between 5 and 8 total candidates for grades 4 through 8 certification. One district could fill those. And there are 500 districts across the state. So I implore everyone, we need to make this a great profession again, if you will. It always was a great profession, but we've got to dust off and shine it again, because we are not getting our people leaving our high schools and going into education to be teachers. So I thought I would highlight that, as I think it's something unique we are trying to do to promote the profession and get people their certification. And last but not least, mentioned so many times tonight, Battle of Buildings. Thank you to all the staff, teachers, principals, folks around this table that help out with Battle of the Buildings. Otherwise, it would never happen. I am going to miss making fun of and harassing the officials, but now it sounds like I'm going to be striped up myself, and it's payback.
Absolutely.
Fair enough. Thank
Still
you.
a chance to form a team, Dr. Bryson.
All right.
Before I can adjourn, I just have to ask you, if you perform a mock interview, but secretly you're actually interviewing the person, is that a mock interview?
I think so. You just can't say that out loud. The mock interview.
All right. Actually, before I adjourn, also, any new business? All right. Moving on to adjournment, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any nays or abstentions? This meeting is adjourned.